So we have questions from how different people have kind of pitched in, and then just some that I came up with. So I want we'll just start in order. Some of them will be kind of a little bit out of order and random, but we'll just start with your name, full name.
Archie Kauffman.
Archie Kauffman, and when you were born and where you were born.
April the 2nd, 1921, and I was born in Midland, Michigan. I could go right to the house, but...
Right, is it, and then you've been born, what did they do, a lot of home births? Did you go to the hospital to be born?
No.
No? Everything was done
At
home? Midwife, stuff like that probably, or? Would they have a doctor come to the house?
I can't even tell you that.
Sure.
I can't even tell you that.
Okay.
At that time you didn't go to the hospital.
Right.
Yeah, for every little thing.
Right, right. And then, so did you grow up in Midland then? Did you guys stay put in Midland, move around a lot?
Yeah, we did. We moved, I would say we was probably to 6 or 7 different farms.
Okay.
Until I started working out. Well, I worked out before, when we still moving around on the farms. I was still, I worked out, and I worked in a grocery store, and I worked in a lumber yard, and I think that's about where I worked, yeah.
Good. So then, you always lived on the farm. It wasn't like you guys lived in town or in the city then.
Always lived in the farm.
Grew up on the farm. And then a lot of people wanted to know, like, what would be one of your earliest childhood memories that you can remember. Just any kind of memory. It doesn't have to be, or even something you remember about your brothers or sisters, something, something like that.
Well, during the Great Depression, I remember that.
What was that like? What was that like growing up during that?
You worked for a little bit of nothing. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
We worked we helped our neighbor out. We worked for 15 cents an hour.
Wow. And
I remember when we had a neighbor that raised white soup beans, and he was always about 3 or 4 weeks behind everybody else when it come to doing anything. And he would put his soup beans in the haymow in the barn, and then if it would rain or snow or whatever, he had them in the dry, and he would come over and ask Delmer and I or ask my dad first whether we would come over and help him thrash these beans. And it was so dirty and dusty we couldn't hardly see from here to you. And we worked for $1 a day.
Wow.
$1 a day. And I can remember when the bread was 15 or 10 cents a loaf for a quarter, and it was good bread.
I bet.
It was better than it is now.
Right, right.
I can remember when the folks went to town, and they never bought anything until, they bought sugar and flour, things that they couldn't raise themselves. And if they paid $5 for groceries, that was
a lot, huh?
That was a lot. That was terrible. Because we raised everything else.
Sure.
We had our own cows, meat, eggs, raised our own vegetables, everything.
That's neat. And then something that you remember about your mom and dad as a young boy or even a young man. Were they real laid back? Were they real strict parents?
Yeah, strict.
Strict.
Yeah. I mean, well, you've heard of people that wore, I mean, the men were plain coats, you
Okay.
remember that? And my mother wore a cape, and oh, let's see, and I remember my dad saying, he said, if you boys want a plain coat, he said, I'll buy you each a pair of, or a suit, plain coats. Well, I guess I was probably the only one that didn't get one. The rest of them all, well, Larry didn't. But Delmer and Willard and Herman all wore plain coats, but I didn't. And I guess I left home before that happened.
Okay.
So, and yeah, they was strict. They was a lot of things we didn't dare do that, well, that we can do nowadays.
Sure.
Do nowadays. Yeah.
And so what would discipline for you as a boy entail? Was it you get a spanking? Did you get a belt, a paddle?
Yeah, we got, well, I think maybe we got a little of both.
Yeah. And would it have been mostly your dad doing the discipline, or your mom?
My dad.
Okay.
My mom hardly ever disciplined,
Okay.
but Dad did, yes. And I remember, I mean, when Dad would, we milked a lot of cows, and of course, milking 35 cows then is different from what it is now. I
Sure.
mean, we milked everything by hand. Now they have the milking parlors, milking
Right.
machines, and Dad would always say, now, if you children help me do chores this morning, clean the stables and whatever, I will take you to school. Well, we wanted that because we didn't want to walk to school, so we helped him do chores, and then he would take us to school,
And so you went to school. It wasn't a home school.
no,
Okay.
country school.
Country school, like a one-room type.
Yeah, it was
Place.
one room type, and I think there was maybe 10 in our class that we was in, and there was another girl and I don't know why, but I don't know if we was a little bit smarter than what they were. Anyway, we got pushed up one class higher than the rest of them were.
Okay.
So there was only 2 of us in that class.
And would you have gone all the way through like 12th grade, or did you guys stop at
10th grade.
Okay.
10th grade. I would have liked to, but
Sure. And then, so did you stay around then, or did you go off to college?
no. Like I say, I would have liked to went through college.
Sure.
I always thought I would want to be a school teacher, but didn't have the finances. And
Sure.
I mean, it was rough during the Depression,
Mm-hmm.
and everything was tight. I mean, you didn't buy anything unless it was necessary.
Mm-hmm. And your mom and dad were both, you guys were raised in a Mennonite church then,
Right?
and they were both Christians.
Yep.
How did that play out in your life as far as the Bible? Was it something that was brought out frequently at home?
Yeah. I think we always, well, Dad always led us in prayer before we ate.
Okay.
And then, well, when I went to civilian public service, I had to register, and then I had 2 or 3 farm deferments, and then when my brothers got to be draft age, well, then the draft board said, he said, you're going to have to go. You can't get a deferment anymore because you've got brothers that are coming along and taking your place. So I had to register, and we were sent to Detroit to take our exams, and then they said, where do you want to go? And you'll be sent so and so. And we said, well, we got COs, or conscientious objectors, and but it was kind of hard to get I mean, not to go to the Army, but we did. I mean, we had to do a lot of talking, and so when we went to camp, why, we had men there from all over, 150 to 200 men in one camp, and I guess what I always thought of was how well 150, 200 men, how well they got along, coming from all walks of life, different homes, and the camps that I was in, why, everybody really got along. And then while we was in Canada, or in California, we had, we was, let's see, about 40 miles from one of the big Mennonite Brethren areas, and they had about 1,500 members there, and that was pretty good size for them. That would have been back in the 1940s.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we would go over there, sometimes we would have our own church in camp, we would have visiting ministers, and so yes, that was a good experience that I had there. Yes.
Good. And then as you were growing up, what kind of, maybe, what'd you play with as a kid?
What did
Toys.
we play with? Tell you the truth,
Games.
I mean, we're living on a farm. We didn't have much time
to play, huh?
Much time to play. We had swings.
Okay.
And I remember one thing that we had boards that we would lay end to end, maybe 15, 16 feet long, and we had a little stick, maybe that long, and at the end it had a board across, looked like a T, and we had wheels that we would start out, and we would see how, if we could keep the wheel from falling off, walk behind it,
Sure.
and push this wheel.
Yeah.
And I remember that. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but maybe you can see what shape
I
like
got an idea.
like a T,
Sure.
and push this wheel along without pushing it off the side of the
Uh-huh.
board. And we had we had a bicycle, but I'm not going to say about that. But I know we had a wagon, and of course we had our certain chores that we had to do.
What would some of those might have been?
Like feeding the hogs and chickens and gathering the eggs, and
Okay.
and we had wood stoves, and we'd have to carry in the wood in the evening, and the wintertime we would make firewood, and we'd have to fill the wood box with wood, and we burnt coal, and we would have to see that we had enough coal and wood in the house to heat the house, because we'd have to bank it at night to stay all night, so it would stay warm. And then in the evening, you would, after we was done eating supper, we didn't have no TV, we didn't have no daily paper, we didn't have no magazines. All we had was a radio.
Sure.
So we had very little to do, so we would go to bed.
Sure. Tired after working all day anyway.
After a day's work, we were tired, and we would go to bed, and the next morning we'd have to get up to milk 35 cows.
Huh. And then, so was the stuff you raised on the farm was a good share, but would have been for your family. But then they sold a lot of it?
Yeah, we always raised, we always had hay, and we raised oats, and a lot of that would go to feed your cows, yeah, your hogs and chickens. We had a big grinder that we would mix our own feed with, and for the cows and the chickens, the hogs, yeah.
Good. And let's see here. What about holidays? What were holidays like when you were growing up? Christmas, Easter, stuff like that. Did you guys get together with extended family?
The folks didn't usually buy many gifts. I mean, they would buy candy. We paid 10 cents a pound for candy. I don't know if you've ever seen these chocolate drops. They're shaped like a cone. Well, they always used to say milk and mail, which would be milk and flour.
Okay.
And like I say, the Dad bought those for 10 cents a pound. And usually some clothes of some kind, but not very much.
Not a whole bunch of stuff. Huh?
No, not like we do nowadays.
Sure.
No.
Okay, and then we had, oh, what about, tell me a little bit about your wife, her name, how you met, what dating or courtship would have been like.
Well, I'll back up a little. When I come back from service and I was out at Heston College, Heston, Kansas, and I was there for 2 years. Well, in camp and in school, I was a cook all but about 6 weeks, and then I come back. Why? Work was hard to find, and I had a cousin that worked at Souter Woodworking in Archibald, and I got to talking to him, and he said, "Where are you working?" And I said, "I'm not." And I said, I'm looking for work." He said, "Well, why don't you go to Souter's and ask Erie whether this would be Erie Souter, which was the president of the company." And he said, "You might be able to get in." So I said, "Okay." So I went down and asked him, and at that time they only had one shift, and they always shut down in the summertime for 2 weeks vacation. And this is about 2 or 3 weeks before vacation started that I went in and asked him, and I asked him whether there was any chance of getting a job there. He said, "Yeah." He said, "We're going to be going on vacation in about 2 weeks." He said, "You come back, you'll have a job." I said, "Okay, thank you." So I went back and went to work there. And then I seen this lady, and I thought, I think I would like to ask her out for a date. So I asked her, and of course she was ready to go right away, and so we went together for 9 months, and we got married. And one thing that she said when we got engaged, she said, "You know what, Archie?" She said, "I thought you would never ask me."
And what about your first car? Would those dates have been? Would you have had your own car then?
Yeah. After I got married, I bought a Chevrolet. What was it? What was the name of those first ones? I can't even tell you now. Anyway, I paid $1,649 for it.
Brand new?
Brand new.
Wow.
$1,649. And we got married and went to the Smoky Mountains and for a wedding trip. Came back and we bought a house, and we had to wait 6 months because these people that lived there, they had their house for sale, and he was building a new one. So we had to wait 6 months till he had his house built and was moved. So we moved and we got married June the 10th, and moved into that house in January. Paid $11,000 for it, and we've lived there ever since.
Oh, it's the same house, same one you're in now. Wow.
We moved there in 51. Yeah, 51, and we're still at the same house. Of course, we've done a lot of fixing and repairing and different things, and so then we raised 4 children,
And the names of all your kids?
Armin, you probably met Armin,
Yeah.
and Twyla,
Mm-hmm.
and Marlo, and Arlen.
Okay.
Marlo lives in Goshen, right, well, not close to where Armin lived, maybe, where do they live? I don't know, 3-4 miles apart. And Arlen lives in Cincinnati.
Good. And what, as you were growing up, what was church like on Sundays?
Well, it
Different
was,
than it is today, as
Yeah.
far as setup?
It's a lot different than what it is today. Well, you had church in the morning, you had church in the evening, and then we would, when we would have communion, well, then we would always have to go through well, be like a closet, well, not a closet, what would you call it? Anyway, we had to go through a little room, and then the bishop and the deacon was always there, and they would ask you different questions, what you done, and if you was ready to take communion, and so on, and if you was, well, then you took communion, and we had a deacon, and we had a minister and a bishop. And they would sit up in the amen corner or the front benches, and then of course you had, like I say, communion twice a year. Trying to think what, and you always sang out of church hymnals. I mean, you didn't have any music like you got today. You had no instruments, no piano, no nothing.
Mm-hmm. And what about men and women sat together? Would they have sat separate?
Men and women sat separate. And when you had prayer, you always knelt. You didn't stand or sit or anything like that. You always knelt.
Huh. And what about particular foods you liked growing up? Favorites? Some of your likes and dislikes?
Well, foods, I like most any kind of food except mushrooms.
No mushrooms, huh?
Mushrooms, I had some mushrooms one time, or no, I shouldn't say I had them. And there was mushrooms in it, and I bit into this, and it tasted just like I bit into a rubber ball. I mean, there was just something about them. I mean, they just did not go with me, and ever since that, I just do not
stay away from them, huh?
I stay away from them. Other than that, like most anything.
Good. And then a little bit about maybe the reunion, how it got started. Did that start with you guys? Did it start with the generation above you?
I think my folks started this one.
Okay.
And this was back in, I got that wrote down at home. I think the first reunion that we had was in Breckenridge.
Okay.
You know what Breckenridge
Yeah.
is?
Yeah.
Okay, that was for the first reunion started, and we've had them every other year ever since that.
Hmm.
And so I don't, as far as I recall, I don't think I missed a one of them.
Uh-huh.
I've been to every one of them.
Wow.
They've been in Michigan, and they've been in see, I think it was in Delaware.
Delaware. I remember one as a child that we went to in Delaware.
Yeah, and I think I was going to say there was in Pennsylvania, but that was a brothers and sisters get together then, I think. Yeah, that was brothers and sisters then. So they've either been in Ohio or Michigan or Delaware. I think the reason is that it's in Ohio. It's more centrally located for the ones from Delaware, the ones from Indiana, the ones from Michigan, and so I think Ohio has probably had most of them, as far as I know. Of course, it grows every year. I mean, it grows, and there's new ones coming to the family, and some of them you don't know exactly where they belong, but you kind of look at them and kind of say, that one belongs so and so, and that one belongs so and so, and yeah.
Good. And then I'd also like to hear personal testimony, like, you know, how you were saved.
Let's see, I think I was 16 when I was baptized in the church.
Okay.
And that was at Midland.
Okay.
Yeah. And I can't even tell you how many other ones. I think there was 3 or 4 at the same time that I was young.
Okay. And then, if you could do anything different or anything that you'd like to pass on to us, our generations below, words of wisdom, something like that.
One thing that come to my mind right away was what our boss at Sauter Woodworking would always say. I mean, he was a well-to-do man, probably the wealthiest man in Archibald. But one phrase I always heard him say: "Save your money, save your money." That was one thing he always pushed. Save your money. We had people that came there from Flint. Used to come down to Sauter's, and I think he worked at General Motors. I'm not sure where she worked. They had anything that they wanted, they would get. But one thing that they always said, or somebody told me, if they was out of work for 1 week, they wouldn't have enough money to buy a loaf of bread.
Really?
But they had money for everything else that they wanted, but they never saved anything. And so that was one phrase that always kind of stuck with me, is save your money. Don't be spending it foolishly, because if you would ever be laid off of work, if you didn't have some money, you would have kind of rough going.
Rough go of it, huh?
Yeah, you would. So, like I say, that was one thing that always kind of stuck with me. And my wife, I mean, when we bought our house for $11,000, which was a lot of money at that time.
Sure.
It really was. And she worried and worried. She said, how are we ever going to pay that house? And when I worked at Souders, my take-home pay was $59 and some odd cents. And our payment on our house was $60 a month.
Mm.
So there for 1 week, we didn't have any money because it took that money to make our house payment. So we had to make sure we saved enough money from the paycheck before to live off for the next week.
Sure.
And we managed, and so yeah, we done. It was kind of a good lesson. I mean, it kind of taught you to save a little of your money.
Right, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. Well, I learned a lot. I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody. And
Yeah. Am I the first one?
You're the first one.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. So that's a little of what I've learned and what I've done and so on. And but like I said, going back to civilian public service days, the guys that I learned to know and from all over the United States, whether it was
And so that civilian public service, would that have been as conscientious objectors? And was that like a branch of the Army? Was that outside of the Army?
That was outside, and you would talk to guys that were in the Army, and they really praised us for what we was doing.
Sure, sure.
Not everybody, but
right.
we met some very nice guys in the Army. In fact, when we transferred from Colorado to California, we was in one car, and the guys in the Army were transferring somewhere else. I don't remember where they was going, and we had to walk through their car to get to the car that had the meals, and they wanted to know where we was going and what we was doing, and we told them. They really, I mean, they was really nice about it.
Good.
Really were. So we was taught that, so we had to go. We had to go what our folks told us.
Right. Right.
Was what we dared do.
Right.
Or what we were supposed to do.
Sure.
You know. So and then the guys that we had JWs, we had Catholics, we had Nazarenes.
Wow.
Lutherans, you name it, and we had them. Amish, a lot of Amish guys, which were, well, they done a little different when they was in camp than what they, I don't know how much you know about Amish, but
This a little bit, but
a little
yeah.
bit. I have to think of this one guy so often. He was from down here in Holmes County, over in Berlin and that area there, and so there was another guy there that was in the same camp that I was in, and he drove his car out there. And so this guy that had his car, he was going to go home on furlough. He had, I don't know if he had 2 weeks or 3 weeks furlough. So he asked one of the other Amish guys to go with him because they lived in the same area. And this guy said, you know what? He said, I can't go now. He said, I just got my hair cut. Because you know how the Amish cut their hair, you know.
Right.
And he went and got his hair cut just like you and I do.
Sure.
And he said, I can't go home now. He said, I just got my hair cut. And another time, why, in the camp that I was at, why, when they would, once in a while they would rent a car or go with somebody, and they would dress up and they would wear a tie. Well, that was a no-no too.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would really live it up. And I learned a lot from the Amish. I had a lot of Amish friends in camp. You know.
I know.
And
Yeah.
when we would have reunions, we would have them at a church, and of course they all dressed in black and white,
Mhm.
black suits, white shirts, and all along that wall, which is maybe 30, 40 feet long, and all along that wall there was nothing but Amish sitting black and white. You know. So it was kind of neat to go to these places, and of course they talked Pennsylvania Dutch, and
Okay.
well, I did then. I mean, I don't know how much I can talk it now, but
Sure.
I would try to talk with them. Some of them you could understand, and some of them kind of, well, it was a little bit of German mixed in there with it, because I couldn't quite make out what they were saying. But
With that Pennsylvania Dutch, would your folks have spoke that?
oh yeah, oh yes,
Yeah.
we would going back to that. Before we went to school, we could not talk English. We talked
Okay.
everything Pennsylvania Dutch. And after we was to school a while, we learned how to talk English. And so when we was out playing, we would talk English, and because we thought that was pretty big stuff then,
Right.
to do that. And so Dad heard us talking English, and he'd come around, and of course he'd say it in English, but this is what it meant. If you children can't talk Dutch, well, you should keep quiet. So we started talking Dutch until he was out of sight, then we talked English again.
That's neat.
So, no, it's different than what it is now.
Yeah.
A lot different. Yeah, it really is.
Good. Questions? I had probably a little bit better idea about you, but my generation down has no idea. Really don't.
Yeah.
So I have a few questions. People have chipped in and thrown some questions, things they'd like to hear. And so we're just start with your name, your full name, and when and where you were born.
Okay, I was born in Midland, Michigan.
Alright, and would everybody have been born at the house? Did you guys go to hospital to be born?
I would think we were born at the house in those days.
Sure.
Yes.
Good. And then, so did you grow up in Midland? Spend most of your time in Midland?
Yes.
You guys move around a lot?
We moved around somewhat. We lived in the house where Grandma and Grandpa, I believe it was, used to live.
Okay.
That was on Stewart Road, to my knowledge anyway. And we went to the Crane School, starting there in the kindergarten.
Okay.
And that school, I think, is still standing,
Really?
but used for other things. It's
Sure.
not a school anymore.
Sure. Good. And so obviously you spent all your time on the farm. You guys grew up on the farm.
Yes.
Never lived in town or
No.
nothing like that.
No.
So tell me something that you remember. Maybe your first thing that you remember as a child. Good memory, bad memory, any kind of memory.
I can go back and I recall Mom going out and playing ball with us. And I can picture Mom out there batting and running. I don't know how old she would have been, probably
Sure.
less than 30.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That's fun. Well, and so then tell me something that you remember about your mom and dad as a young boy, what your memories would have been of them. Were they strict parents? Were they
what, strict?
real strict? Were they real, you know, loving, caring?
Oh, I would say they were. I mean, it's hard for me to go way back
Sure.
into my childhood
Sure.
days and remember. I can kind of remember the clothes that we had to wear. I know we wore, what, maybe this is not what you want, but we used to
That's great.
wear knickers.
Okay.
And to the generation of today, they likely will not know what that is. But that's a pantsuit that comes down below the knee
Mm-hmm.
with elastic around it.
Okay.
And that's what we used to wear. And we, of course, had our chores to do. We had to pump water for the cows. That was part of our chores.
Okay.
And we used to raise pigs, ducks, rabbits, pigeons, bannies. That was my hobby. I think I
Okay.
told you some of
A
that.
little bit about it.
Yeah. And of course we had to help at a young age to go out and work in the sugar beet field. And we did what was called thin and blocking. And after the sugar beet was drilled, the seed was more or less just all along, and then we used to go along with a hoe and cut one hoe out, and then another hoe out with just maybe 2-3 stalks standing, and then the next person would crawl along on hands and knees and take all these out except one stem. We'd leave one stem in for the sugar beet, and the rows seemed very long, and I think some of the rows were 1/2 mile long.
Wow.
And to get down on your hands and knees and crawl, we did that quite often.
Hmm.
And then to harvest them, in the fall of the year, we had what was called a beet lifter. And this beet lifter was something similar to a plow, except that it went up like that and then back down, so you get that right underneath the sugar beet, and as it went up over this high spot, it was loose. Then we take one hand for each row, grab the sugar beet, pound it together, knock the dirt off, and threw them in a pile so the tops were all one way.
Mm.
And then later on we'd come along with a beet knife, and the beet knife had a hook on it, and then we would hit the hook into the beet on the top side of it and grab the sugar beet over here and slice the top off and throw the beet over there on the pile. And then we would, after we went so far, then we'd have to pick up all these sugar beets, and then we covered them up with beet tops to preserve them and keep them more crisp from the hot sun.
Okay.
And then we'd come along later on and jabbed our beet fork in there and loaded them up onto the truck and hauled them to the refinery where they processed them.
Wow.
And we had acres and acres of them. And I remember the one year our sugar beets made 20 ton to the acre, which is very good.
Hmm. And so you probably got pretty proficient with that beet knife.
Oh, we
You
had
guys
to.
have a lot of injuries or accidents along the way during that?
It was easy to do because the sugar beet was 8, 9, 10 inches long, and you
Okay.
just grabbed it down here and topped it up here.
Okay.
I don't know that I ever cut myself
Sure.
with a beet knife. Some of the beet tops then we would feed them to the cows,
Oh.
and made very good feed, and that produced a little bit more milk.
Oh.
I mean, it was very good for that.
Sure. What about as a boy, what would have been some of the things you guys did for entertainment, games or toys that you would have had?
You know, as I look back, I see we used to have what was called a hoop and wheel. And what a hoop and wheel is is a little metal ring, iron ring, maybe that big around, 8 inches, and then we would take another longer stick and nail a piece across it to make a T. And then we would take this little short piece and put it inside of this ring and make it start going, and then we would run along behind it and keep that wheel going straight up and just push it around. We did that quite often. And let's see, there was something else that I was, oh, another thing that we used to do was take a little board and maybe lay it over here on top of this step and have the one end sticking out beyond and put a ball on that and then hit the other end, and that would shoot the ball way up in the air. We used to do that a lot. Our games, our toys were pretty well homemade.
Sure.
That we picked up.
That's neat. And so then you guys would have had, you would have had a pretty big garden then at home?
You know, garden I don't remember much about. Another thing, what we did was we had our ball team as we grew older. I mean, it was the Kindys and the Malin Kauffman family and the Noble Kauffman family, and there were enough of us boys there that we could make a softball team. And then we'd go out and play schools and other churches, and very often we would win. That's one thing I remember.
Pretty good ball players.
We had all good ball players, the Kindys and the Kauffmans. And Sunday afternoon, either we would...
Alright, so you guys decided to adopt.
Yes, and we went through this process. It was in Catholic Family Service in Bay City. The man's name was Michael Schmidt that we would work with. And he would come out, or else we would go into town and have an appointment there. And we went through this, and probably a year and a half of counseling with him, and he wanted to know a lot of different things. I mean, how many stairways have you got in the basement and like that. But the day came when he said that we can come down now, and I think this was in probably around the 1st of December in 1968. And they had this little baby there, and she was about 3 weeks old. Her birthday was on the 14th, so she was about 3 weeks old. And he said we should come down, and I'm thinking the whole family went down to see this little baby. He said, I'll go in and I'll pull this drawer out and I'll get a baby out, and then you can view her. And he said, if that isn't satisfactory, bring her back. We'll put her back in the drawer and we'll shove that one shut and we'll pull another one out. He said, we got so many babies in here, they're hanging from the ceiling. He said, we're just loaded with babies. So he brought out this little baby, and she was kind of whimpering and crying, and as he was holding her there, she looked up at us, and she had the most beautiful smile, black hair, kind of curly and wavy, with dimple in the cheek, and I could have said right then, this is it. But he said, take her over in the other room, undress her, check her out, see if she's got all of her fingers and all her toes, if there's any blemishes on her body, or just check her out. And we came back out and said, we'll take her. We were ready to take her then. Oh no, you can't have her yet. So we had to go home without her. And then later on, or no, wait a minute. No, we can't have her right now yet. There was something else that happened there. But anyway, they said they have to. Well, I'm not sure, John. But anyway, when they did bring her out and give her to us, it was, I think it was about the 18th of December. And then they had her wrapped with a red and green blanket to make it look like a Christmas present. And oh, that was special. The children were so happy. And so we took her home, and we had her there. But you know, we were almost afraid to go to town and go to stores for fear somebody would ask, oh, isn't that a pretty baby? Isn't she cute? And we were getting to the place where we were afraid to go to town for fear somebody would grab her.
Really?
And we had a lot of problems right at the time. But about a year and a half later.
Because they might recognize her?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I mean,
Right.
you know, the mother didn't even see the baby.
Right.
When the baby was born,
Right.
she did not want to see her. I
Okay.
mean, she gave her up right there.
Right, right.
And a year and a half later, I was working, and I know the place where I was working yet. I know the name of the people that lived there. And at noon, they came where I was. I think I was eating my lunch, and they said, there's somebody on the phone wants to talk to you. Okay. So I went and I answered the phone, and here it was my wife, Ruth. And she says, Daddy, I had the nicest phone call today. Why? What happened? What's going on? She says, they just called from Catholic Family Service, and they said our little girl that we have has a baby sister.
Oh.
Do you want her? And we were at the place where we were talking, and we were in the process, going through the paperwork of trying to adopt another one. And so we made contact and said, we'll take her. And now, when can we see her? And that was another thing that they called a viewing. When they called us down to see Kimmy, they called that a viewing. So I said, when do we come down to see her? Oh, you don't. I mean, that has changed. Either you want her or you don't want her. Which do you want? I said, we'll take her without ever seeing her. So that's the way that process worked then. And at that time, I'm thinking it was at that time that we were taking Bonnie to Pennsylvania to go to school.
Okay.
And yes, because we took her out there to Chambersburg to go to school out there, and then we picked this little baby up on our way back. And we've had her ever since.
Right.
And so that was a very, very interesting experience to adopt these children.
Yeah, that's neat.
I remember we probably had Kimmy along when we took Bonnie out there. Because on our way back, I remember we had our old van fixed up, and we used to sleep in the van. And this one particular night, we would park at maybe like in the parking lot of a Kmart store or maybe a Kroger store, and we just park. I mean, we had our sleeping facilities and everything along with us to spend the night there. I remember this one night then, we parked, I want to say it was a Kmart store, and then every so often a police car, we'd hear a police car or see it drive around this parking lot. And one night we heard something stop. And I remember going over to the window and looking out. No, I didn't either. They came up to the window and cupped their hands and were looking in, and we were laying there on the floor, all three of us, sleeping, or we weren't sleeping right at that time. But while lying there, I just kind of rolled my eyes over, and I could see them on the outside, and I heard them say, they're all right there, they're sleeping. That was kind of scary.
Sure.
But I remember of doing that. And so out of that we got the two little girls.
Okay. And then, how many grandchildren do you have?
I want to say there's 21. I mean,
Sure.
might give or take.
Give or take. Sure.
and about the same in great.
Grandchildren.
And they are very special to us. Very special.
Yeah.
And then, let's see, that would have been in, Kimmy was born in 68, and then Ruth passed away in 82. So Kimmy would have been about 13, if I remember right. 13, and Lynette was 11.
Mm-hmm.
And from there on, we go into the next step then.
Right. Right. Yeah, I don't remember a whole lot
You don't?
before that. You know, grandmother died. I think I was seven,
is
6 or
that
7,
Yeah.
and so I don't.
You don't.
My memory of her, that all I really remember, because I remember being there at the house, but we often as little boys would get outside and go play. But I remember her making bread. At the, you know, like that's just one.
Is that?
Come in and get a big hug and
Yeah.
covered in flour, and you know. But I remember that. That's
Well,
one
good.
memory that I have.
But then I remember, you know, it just kept getting worse. We made several trips anyway up to Zion and Rochester, Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
And I very well remember some of them trips that we made.
And that would have been like the Mayo Clinic?
Yeah, the Mayo Clinic.
Yeah, my mom just told me that she was in at the same time that C.S. Lewis was in.
Who?
C.S. Lewis was an author, wrote Mere Christianity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mom told me that, I guess, that they'd have been in at the same time.
But I remember going up there. We had a place to stay, and we went down to the clinic. And oh, that auditorium was huge. That was just like a stadium. And I know we went in there and sat on one of those seats or benches, whatever they had, until they called her in. And it just seemed so long before she came back out. And I was sitting out there just wondering, what are they doing? What are they saying? What are they finding? And finally she come out. And she sat down there for just a little bit. And she said, let's get out of here. Well, what did they find out? Well, let's just get out of here. I want to get out of here. And after we got out on the road, then she started sharing a little bit. What she said, I've got cancer. I'm sorry. But that was very, very hard to take. She had several surgeries beforehand. She had her spleen removed, and just a lot of things that she went through. But they gave her medication, and I'm not sure anymore whether it was 15 pills, but she could take 1 pill a day, or she can take them all at the same time. And she chose to take them all at the same time. And then she would be sick for a number of days before she would gradually feel a little bit better. But then in 30 days, she had to go through the same thing again. And with this medication, it made her face just puff up. She had a big double chin. I mean, she was just as if she was really fat. But she wasn't. It was from the medication that brought this on. Until later on then she went to the hospital down at St. Luke's. And I know Ron and Colleen come out, and that was encouraging, but yet I knew something is wrong. Why would they be here? And I was so tired. I was really tired. And I remember I went in, I laid on the floor in the waiting room. I got behind the Davenport, and I laid down there and went to sleep. And the next time that I heard Ron come in, he said, she's called me. That was quite an experience. So I was left without Had two little girls, 11 and 13. I needed to go to church.
How did that, what did that do at the time as far as your relationship with Christ? I often, wonder how people that are non-Christians go through stuff like this, that they have nothing to lean on and no hope.
Yeah. I had a lot of support from the church people.
Right.
I had a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had one fellow, Dave Swartz, that was a very close friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd often go out for coffee together. And I just felt as though the people are here to help me and to help support me. And they were. I went through 1 year. Yes, it was just a little bit over a year. No, just a year. She passed away in July, the latter part of July, and I went 1 year by myself and the girls until I found Mildred then.
Mm-hmm.
And then I dated her for, well, from the 1st of July until the next July again.
And where did you meet her?
Where did I meet her? At one time, it was the same year that she was so sick, in 1982, that there was a girl from Iowa and a girl from Indiana that knew Shirley from back years before, and that went to school together. See, Shirley and Mildred used to go to EMC together. They were in Bible school together. But now this girl from Iowa and the girl from Indiana wanted to come up in the last part of July and then go and visit Shirley. Well, we had to tell them that it did not suit because she is sick and she can't come, can't go. That is the time that that they had kind of scheduled. And then a year later, they tried it again. I mean, Ruth passed away, and then it lapsed a year, and then these girls wanted to try it again. So they came up from Iowa, from Indiana, and Shirley was living up in Tawas at that time. And so Shirley comes to church and has these two girls with her. And I am responsible to take care of things at the church. I mean, I used to go down and shovel the driveway off, clean the snow off, open the windows, see that the heat is on, and did all those things. And then I was the last one to leave the church, usually. And I was usually the first one there Sunday morning, the first one on Sunday night. And so I was waiting there for them to come out of the church and go home so I can lock the door so I can go home and have my cooked oatmeal. That's usually what we had for Sunday dinner with the girls. And so this, well, no, before we left the church then, Shirley came out with these two girls, and she said, Delmer, I'd like to have you meet some friends of mine. This is Rhoda Hirschberger, howdy do. And this other girl here, this is Mildred Yoder from Middlebury, howdy do. And that was it. So we went out, Shirley left, took the girls with her, and they went up to Tawas. I took the two girls and I went home and we had our cooked oatmeal. And took my Sunday afternoon nap, came back to church Sunday night, and Dave was about the second one there. I was the first one. And he said, well, I suppose you spent all afternoon up at Tawas. And I said, for what? Why, those girls that are with Shirley. So I never even thought anything about it.
Sure.
Well, he says, you better get going. So now my mind is going backwards, and I'm trying to recall, and I could. Then I could recall that other girl by the name of Mildred Yoder. I can tell you what color shoes she had on. I can tell you what color of a dress she had on. And a lot of things like that that I recalled. And I got thinking about this. And so I had a telephone call with my sister Shirley, because she is good friends with Mildred, and I was getting information. What kind of a girl is this, and whatever goes with it. So it wasn't very long until I was making plans to go to Indiana, because we had our church conference the first part of August, and so I made plans to go down there. And then word got out that Delmer is going to conference, and he's out looking for a wife. But I don't know if that was right or not. But anyway, we had made plans where to meet when we get to conference. And I said, how will I ever find a girl there? They're going to be waiting for us. And there's over 1,000 people there. Where will I ever meet up with her? And I walked into the conference grounds, and right there she was. They were sitting out there waiting. She was there, Mildred was, and her sister-in-law was there, and somebody else, I don't know who else, maybe even her mother. But that's when we met, and so I think we went out for dinner that day, and went uptown somewhere. Conference was in Indiana, so we went up to a restaurant and got started. But that was a very, very happy time, because her mother wasn't well, and she was responsible to take care of her mother. She was in a wheelchair, and it just seemed as though I could fit right in there. I could take care of her mother, and she liked me, and she liked what I was doing for her. And but we went through some rough times. My mother knew Mildred. My brothers and sisters all knew Mildred. Every one of our family knew Mildred but me. I was the only one that had never made contact. One time we went down there in a motorhome with Samuels, and we went to the Town Line Church where she goes to church. And she said she was teaching a Sunday school class, and she could see out the window and saw us as we were coming in. And then at a certain point, they had us all stand and introduce ourselves who we were. And that's the same church where she was going. And but it was such a happy experience. And I know Mildred's mom said to her one time, she said, what particular day, what day was that? It was some day, boy, I can't think of it right now. Anyway, her mom said, one day you go out with a certain group, and the next day you go out with a grandpa with 8 children. Maybe it was, I don't know what day it was, but we had a very good time. And it's been a happy occasion ever since. I mean, if you want to talk about making homemade bread like you did earlier, that's nice, because she still does that. And I know I was to her house for a Sunday dinner one time, and unbeknownst to me, she had made pie, and she didn't know anything about what kind of pie is my favorite pie, but when we were done eating, she went out in the kitchen and got the pie, and here it was cherry pie, my favorite pie. And we've had very, very good times together. We've traveled quite a lot. A lot of the people that she knows, I know. And the people that I have known, she knows about them. So that's a double contact there. I mean, and we have made many, many friends since then. And so we just got done celebrating our 25th anniversary. And we have had a wonderful time. We have so many things to share and talk about together.
That's neat.
Did I give you one of these at any time?
I took a couple of them with me when I was there.
Okay, okay.
It looked like there was a lot of them, so I took a few of them.
That's all right.
Let's see.
but my talk about the things that we haven't done together and the friendships that we have made since is very nice.
And let's see, what about some of your favorite foods growing up? You know, maybe foods that you were forced to eat as a child that you don't like now, or
I don't know that there is anything that I don't like.
Archie shared with me that the only thing that he doesn't like is mushrooms.
Mushrooms.
Yeah. He said he bit into a mushroom and it tastes like a rubber ball to him.
No, I don't know. I wouldn't say that there is anything that I don't really like. And Mildred is a very good cook, a very good housekeeper, and fits in beautiful with me. I don't have to be afraid to go to church and invite somebody home for dinner without her being ready to go along with it.
Good.
And that has happened different times.
Good. Well, I think that covers most of the questions I had.
Be it tomatoes, or be it mushrooms, or even Utakasha. You don't know what Utakasha is?
I don't think so. And last time I learned all about ground cherries.
Well, this is the same thing, only Utakasha is the Dutch word for it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But she's a wonderful baker and very good cook, and I love her very, very much.
And let's see. Oh, anything you'd like to pass on, a piece of advice or wisdom? Archie said that one of the pieces that he'd gotten that he likes to pass on is save your money. Make sure you save some money.
Yes.
Don't spend every dime of it. Save some money.
I mean, sacrifice if you have to. Save money. And I want to say something else, but I don't know if I should say it right here because it might interfere with something else. I'll maybe share it with you personally.
No, I'll turn it right off. So I had put out an email kind of sent for people to send some questions, and I had some questions for everybody, and some of them came on napkins. So we're going to start with just your name, when you were born, and where you were born.
Okay, I was born June the 20th, 1931, in Midland County, I guess it was. It still is, I guess. And
Full name too. Gotta have the full name.
Herman Kauffman.
Herman Kauffman. And you, I'm guessing, along with everybody else, stayed right on the farm. You guys didn't live in town or
no, we never
anything
moved
like
in
that.
town. In fact, I don't remember the place that I was born. I know about where I was at.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure how old I was when we moved over to the farm that I started remembering things.
Okay.
That was over in the Charlie Sass farm.
And what kind of age difference is there from you to Archie?
There's 10 years difference. Archie is 10 years
10
older.
years older, and Delmer is 8 years older, 9 years older?
Yeah, he's a couple years younger than Archie is.
Okay. Alright, so what's looking for any good stories that you might remember from when you were little, growing up on the farm? Or just, an early memory that you have.
Well, we lived at that farm, I was born in 31. We're not sure the year that we moved to the farm, but I can remember, I must have been only about 3 years old, according to the dates that I get from when my grandfather died.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember somebody holding me up and looking into the casket on the
Oh.
day of the funeral. And
Yeah.
I would have been about, according to the dates that they was telling me, when he died, I was about 3 or 3.5.
Okay.
Some people think
Wow.
maybe that's kind of young, but
Yeah.
I do remember that.
Sure.
So, yeah.
And let's see. And what's something that you remember about your mom and dad?
Well, my dad was always a hard worker, and he always milked a lot of cows,
Mhm.
and he worked for the state. He would get up and milk anywhere from 15 to 20, 22 cows, take care of them, clean the stables and water them, and then
What,
he
those
would
were state cows then or something? Or
uh,
you say you worked for the state?
well, on the highway.
Oh, on the highway. Okay.
All
Okay.
dirt in the daytime, then he'd come home and do all the chores in the evening again.
Mhm.
Now, I don't remember anything of that, but this
Sure.
is what he would tell us as we were growing up.
Mhm.
And he was always a hard worker, and yeah, he was a good dad, you know.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, us growing up, we thought that he was kind of hard on us at times
Uh-huh.
sometimes, but
Yeah.
looking back now, it was good lessons, good experience.
Yeah.
And, yeah, my dad and I always had a good relationship, and,
Good.
even up until the time we left. And
Yeah.
I know what he told me when I left for 1W service. He told me to try to be a good guy
Yeah.
and go straight.
And so what about, what I thought was kind of interesting is, what was it like talking English with them?
We always talked Pennsylvania Dutch at home.
Right.
Yeah.
And what was remember the phrase, if you did talk English?
Well, if he talked English, well, I can't think of. It's
I
very
had
rare.
Grandpa,
It was
Grandpa
rare.
said it was, he said it in Dutch, and it was something along the lines of, you know, if you're not going to talk Dutch,
Yeah,
don't talk.
I remember him telling that to my older
Okay.
brothers.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he ever mentioned that to me. But
Sure.
of course, the brothers always told me that. He said,
Yeah.
if you can't talk Pennsylvania Dutch, well then just be quiet. So, but they was the folks are always good. We never had a lot of money,
Right.
but nobody did. I was born during the Depression years, and we never had a lot of money. And it seems like when Christmas come around, the yearly rent was always due, so the folks was always short of money. Seemed like
sure.
to us, it seemed like.
Yeah.
But $1 was $1 then. You know?
Right. Right.
And I know a lot of times they didn't give us much for Christmas, which was all right. We didn't
Yeah.
know any different, but
Right.
we survived, and maybe it was good for us.
Sure.
We can learn to appreciate a little bit more what we have.
What did that, growing up, with the depression like that, how's it impacted you today?
I look at back, it was a good experience for us because, yeah, we could you could buy milk cows for, I know, years later, for $40. I mean,
Wow.
$40 was for a dairy cow. I know one time we bought a dairy cow and we paid $100 for her. She was a Guernsey cow. She milked 12, 14 quarts twice a day.
Wow.
And we milked her for three months and turned around and sold her for $100.
Hmm.
And yeah, we always had a lot of dairy. I always helped milk a lot of cows. And of course, I never got into the milking by hand like my older brothers did.
They would have had
always-
some
we
kind of
always-
machine by
We
then.
always had the milking machines, and yeah, we Willard, and after in about the year 1942, I think, is when we put an addition to our barn,
Okay.
and Willard and I was in charge of milking the cows and taking care of that. Willard would do the cleanup after the milking, and yeah, that was an exciting time.
Yeah.
I remember when we was building this barn, we lived on another farm, and we'd go over there during the daytime. And man, it was so cold, I just about freeze. I don't know even why I come along, but I come along, and yeah, you'd just freeze to death. But couldn't hardly wait to get home. Of course, I wasn't much of a school kid, and I was so glad when school was out. But of course,
Yeah.
we knew we had hard work, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was a great experience. But you asked about what it would the impression that we'd have nowadays. Children nowadays can't understand, you know, if they'd had to live in what we went through,
Right.
they'd say, how in the world did you do it?
How'd you make it?
How did you make ends meet?
Yeah.
But we always had enough food. That's one thing. My mom, she always done a lot of canning, and we done up hogs, and beef, and yeah, the rendering of the sausage. I remember those. They'd build a fire and cut up the hogs and put all the pieces in there and fry all the lard and
Yeah.
put them in crocks and put them down the basement, and that would be our lard for the summer. And,
Oh.
of course, all the water had to be pumped by hand. I mean, for the cows, that all had to be done by hand.
Mm.
And yeah, I remember, since I'm talking to your grandpa, that he was kind of drawing a picture of the barn. I don't understand how he could remember all this stuff. But we used to have to carry all the milk up the stairs, about, I guess it would be probably 10, 12 flight of stairs, just steps, and we'd just put them on one step at a time. And we had to carry it out to the milk house, and there they'd cool the milk until the milkman come around. And we had, I remember we had a bicycle. We bought a bicycle for one of the boys, and that was shared amongst all of us kids.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, of course, going to school, I don't know if I ought to even mention this because they'll probably laugh when they hear. Everybody knows the story. I never liked to go to school.
Uh-huh.
And so my mom, she'd try to send me to school, and she would say, "Get in the shul, get in the shul," and she'd come with a whip. Well, and she'd threaten me with a whip, and I'd go a little ways, and then she'd come a little bit further, and we had about, I think it was 1.75 miles to school. And I know one time I ran away from school and went home. There was nobody there, and I guess I was on my way back before somebody found out where I was at. And of course, I was only probably 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, we lived on that farm until 1940. We moved from that place, and we moved up to about 25 miles north. And there we went to a public school there too, but then we rode the bus. And so
Oh, okay.
I remember one year I never missed one day of school. I remember that. And then when we moved to another farm, we had, I would say maybe 12, 15 cows we had to move, and cows. And so I think it was Archie and Delmer and Woolard and I, and we got a couple other guys. And of course, traffic wasn't as bad then. And yeah, we'd just chase them down the road.
Oh.
We wouldn't truck them, we'd chase
Yeah.
them and keep them out of the fields, and that was our job. And somebody would go along the side of the fields and or the road, and the rest of us would chase them along behind. That's the way we moved the cows.
Yeah.
So, and my mom, I have a lot of respect for my mom. She was a good mom.
Yeah. I hear she was a pretty good cook too.
Oh yeah, she was a good cook. Yeah, and one thing that I remember, that every morning at the breakfast table, he would read out of the Bible to us.
Okay.
While we had breakfast there. That was always, and we tried to carry that on down through our generation. And we did. After we was married, we did that for a long time. But well, you know how it was. I'd go to work at a different time.
Mm-hmm.
In the evenings, I wouldn't always get home in later years, and so finally, sorry to say, that was kind of discontinued. But,
Yeah.
with regrets.
So what about so the Bible and church while you're growing up, different than those today?
Yeah. We if the church doors were open, my folks would see that we would get there.
Yeah.
And I remember, money. Like I said earlier, money was short. I don't recall my dad being a big giver at the church.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much he put in, but he would give us a penny.
Sure.
And that's, each one got a penny Sunday morning, put in the Sunday school offering. So, and I guess penny then went a lot further.
Penny today.
Yeah, yeah, you could take a penny and go to the store and get a pretty good size bag of candy for a penny.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh.
And ice cream cones would be I think a nickel for an ice cream cone.
Wow. And so what'd you do for entertainment when you were growing up? Obviously there was a lot of hard work, but
A lot of hard
toys or
Yeah,
what you guys did for fun?
We had our own toys. Of course, we didn't have no TV or anything to
Right.
look at. But we had our cousins. We had cousins that we would be together a lot. We'd make ice cream or popcorn or have drinks, and played a lot of croquet. And we'd make our own entertainment, really, to say the least. And,
Did you have the game with the hoop and the wheel? I heard a little bit about that one from.
I don't recall. It seems to me we did, but I remember Irene talking about it in her time. But
Okay.
I kind of half-raised remember having something like that. A lot of croquet, and we played, and of course, like I say, there was a lot of work involved, like you mentioned too.
Yeah.
And Sears and Roebuck and Montgomery Ward catalogs, we look at the wish catalogs. And,
Right. Right.
And I don't know, I think we did get some magazines that we would look at. Yeah, that was about our entertainment.
Sure. What about discipline, I guess. How you were disciplined, and if you got away with more stuff than everybody else, or
Well, I don't
who got
know.
away with the most stuff?
Well,
Biggest troublemaker.
Well, I can't to be honest with you, I can't remember in my grown-up days that I ever got a whipping. I can't remember. I don't know if the others did. It seems to me a few of them might have got them, but like I say, they wasn't one to use the stick on us. They just talked to us and try to discipline us that way. But they was good parents.
Good.
Well, I would say we was never allowed to, growing up, after we could go old enough to go to ball games or county fairs. It was a no-no. You just didn't do that. And it was they tried to stick with what the church taught, and it was very strict on them. I guess we thought it was too strict, but
Right.
some of the other people in church seemed to get away. We had to wear black stockings, and of course we wear short pants. And, but no, I remember that we couldn't go ice skating. We never learned to ice skate because they thought that was a worldly place to go. And,
Okay.
So we didn't make much beans about it. We just whatever they said, we did.
Sure.
Going to be another hot one.
What about? So you went to school 10th grade and then
I went to 8th grade. I went
8th
to
grade?
kindergarten, then I went to 8th grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you didn't pursue school after that then?
No,
Right.
that's another thing. My dad was not highly, he wasn't much of an education. I guess that comes from, he wasn't Amish, but
Right.
you don't need an education to farm.
Right.
And I think Larry might have went a little bit further. Shirley, I think, finished high school. But no, 8th grade as far as I went, and I wish now, looking back, I'm handicapped in some of those things that if I'd have pursued it, I'd be better qualified to do things now.
Sure.
Because things now, I'm just a handicapped, but those I can't go back and redo that.
Right.
So,
And then, so when did you leave home?
I I stayed at home until, let me see, I went to 1W service. I was born in 31, and I went to 1W service in 52. December of 52, I went to serve my 1W service time in Lansing, down the state of Michigan, to college. I worked in the bull barns there for 2 years. And of course, we weren't restricted to, and looking back, I guess we shouldn't have went home as often as we did, because a lot of the boys that were in the Army didn't get home, and you know, we'd bring our cars home, and at least I did. I'd hide my cars so the neighbors wouldn't see that us boys were home.
Oh.
So every 2 weeks, or about every 2 weeks, I had a weekend off, and I would go home. Sometimes I'd go to Ohio to visit Archie, but most of the time I'd go home and help Pop on the farm. And, we thought we knew better than he did how to do things, and so
Sure.
we, a lot of things that we thought he wasn't smart enough, but I guess he made out all right with us, without us there. Well, Willard and I left at the same time. I think we left the same day, and of course he was with the cow. We had everything to do then, but I think after I got out of service, he still had the cows, because I worked on the farm there for him for 3-4 years. Yeah, it was. Well, after I got out of 1W service, that was after we was married too. Then.
So is that, and then so where'd you meet?
Well, let me back up a little bit. The place where I met Irene is Sam and Betty hadn't been married too long, and so they decided to make a trip to Delaware for a visit. And so they asked Mamie and I think Shirley and myself. We rode out to Delaware with them and spent some time in Delaware, and that's where I run across we stayed at Milt Schwarzenegger's. That would be Elizabeth's parents. And that's where I met Irene, and so we started writing letters, and we've done that for, I don't know, maybe 6-8 months. That's before I went into service.
Okay.
And then I was thinking about coming to Delaware to see her, and she thought she thought I had marriage on my mind, and so she sent me the Dear John letter.
Oh.
And so we never pursued that any further, and then when Willard and Elizabeth got married, why, we come out, and then it's when we started writing again, and we never were together an awful lot. That could be good or bad, you know, but we've done a lot of letter writing, and but if we made a telephone call, why, we knew that there was some trouble somewhere. Death in the family or an accident or something, and so we just never called and talked on the phone like we do nowadays.
Right.
So, and then we was married in 1954, December.
So most of the dating was done by letter.
By letters, yeah. After we was engaged, we made several trips back and forth. I think she'd come out to visit us once, or come to visit me once or twice, and I went out several times too. So yeah, and our wedding plans and everything had to be done by letter, and she was very good in coordinating that. She done an excellent job.
Yeah. And so then, where did you live after you got married?
After we was married and we worked in Lansing for about 3 months, and then we come home in the spring, and Pop put up a small house across the road from the farm, and we lived in that. Well, before that, one winter we went up to northern part of Michigan, worked the winter out for feeding feeder cattle, and then in the spring we come back again, and we helped on the farm, and then we decided we would move to Delaware, and we was out to Delaware for I think, about a year, and for some reason I just couldn't get used to live in Delaware, and so we finally found a job back in Midland again, and we come back, worked there for 9 months, and then I discovered that I didn't care for that, and so we quit that job and we went back out in Delaware, and I started working for my brother-in-law, and I started driving truck, and I drove truck for her brother-in-law for I would say close to 10 years. I hauled logs and piling up into New England states and various places, and then I sold his business, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I finally, somebody talked to me, and we wanted me to start driving, buy my own truck and start hauling lime, and so we did that, and I did that for I think it was 33 years. I retired from driving that when I was about 73. That's when I sold my truck. Of course, in the meantime, we bought a farm, and we started raising chickens, and we sold that. And then we moved where we're living right now, and I'm still driving truck. And we put up 2 chicken houses, and that's my livelihood now. So.
Oh, just chickens.
Chickens, yeah. We got we started out with about 45,000 chickens, and then I started raising different kind of chicken, and we're down to about anywhere from 35 to 38,000 a flock, and we grow about 4.5 flocks a year.
Wow, that's a lot of chickens.
Yeah. But I enjoy it. I really
like it?
Yeah, I do.
Good. And then all your kids, what are your kids' names?
The oldest one is Ken, and the next one is Randy, and they're both here. And then there was Fonda, and then Marlon. And then I think it was in 1975, well maybe 74, we thought of adopting one from over out of I forget the country anymore. But we was going to get the children. We had all our interviews done, and we was ready for this baby to be shipped to the States. And they promised that that the baby would be on the next flight. Well, the flight before that, there was a plane that somebody shot down from overseas, and all the children, a plane load of children and nurses were all killed, and so they said no more children out of that country for adoption. And so we just kind of left it set at that. And then it wasn't too long after that why we got a call from some friends of ours in I believe it was Missouri, and they said that there's a baby. If we want a baby, they knew we was looking for a baby.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
There was a baby that's born in Red Lake, Canada, up in that area. And if we are still interested, that they wanted us to fly out there or get out there and pick up the baby. And we had a family reunion at our place. And I took the call, and Irene said, I said to Irene, you need to get on the phone. She said, no, whatever you decide, I'll go along with it. I said, no, I am not going to make that decision. I said, I want you on the phone so we can decide together. And what they wanted us to do is what I just repeated, that there's a baby available in the Thunder Bay, Red Lake area if we want the baby. And there's also, there was 3 children there. And the boy and the girl was available for adoption, or at least to take away from there. The parents were alcoholics and drunkies. And so we told them that we'd meet them there. So we went and got our tickets, and they drove from Missouri up, and we flew from Washington, D.C., and flew up there. And that's where we first got acquainted with our youngest daughter, which is Ramona. And so we took her home. We wasn't sure if we could keep her, but at least we'd have her.
Mm-hmm.
And the other couple took the boy, but the little girl, the oldest of the two girls, they wouldn't let go. And because the parents were pretty close to her and they didn't want her to leave. Well, and Canada said if these children ever get in, if this ever happens again, the two girls, or the whole family would be taken away from them, and they would be awarded to whoever, they couldn't have them back, in other words. So anyway, we got the youngest. She was only 6 weeks old. She was just very tiny.
Yeah.
And she hadn't had nothing to eat much for days. And the oldest girl, her older sister, tried to feed her water because the parents were always drunk up and didn't take care of them. So anyway, we brought her home and flew home with her and kept her. And the father Irene wrote a note telling what all was about, what we're going to do with him, and he signed the paper and he said, "You can have him." And that's about all there was to that part. Well, it was, I think it might have been, Irene would remember this a little bit more than I do, but it seems to me it was 4 or 5 years before we really, yeah, it was probably more than that. We got the adoption all done. We spent quite a few years, several years. But in the meantime, the oldest girl, which is Michelle, come down to the States, and the other, she went to live with the other family that had the little boy, and it didn't work out. And so they finally said that we can't handle her, we have to send her back. And we said, no, don't send her back, we'll take them, we'll have the two girls together. But she came and stayed with us before that for a weekend, I think, and she never was the same when she went back. And so we said, well, let us have her. And so between the two of them, we kept them. And like I say, Mona was 6 weeks old and Michelle was 3 years old when we finally got them. And but then we adopted them, and yeah, it was a growing experience, and they fitted right in with the rest of the family, and they're not we don't call them adopted girls anymore. They're our daughters.
Right.
They're just like our rest of our children, and we're leave this place, why they'll get their share of the inheritance, whatever's left.
Sure.
Just same as
everybody
the
else.
others. There's not going to be we don't make no distinction between them. They're our girls.
Right.
And if people ask about us, we tell them, yeah, they're adopted, but they're our girls.
Right.
I remember here, it's been maybe 4 or 5 years now, that the girls' mother never seen her mother after she left. Yeah, now Mona did. She was in contact with her, and they still are in contact. The oldest one is in contact with, I think, with the father occasionally. Whenever he's drunked up, why he just calls and talks to her. It could be any between the hours of midnight and 4 o'clock, which they don't like to take calls like that. But the girls have never seen. Mona has never seen her dad.
Okay.
And Michelle, I don't know if she would even remember her, but their mother made a visit down to Delaware one time to visit the girls. And Michelle met her mother at a McDonald's, and after the introductions, why, she said, now I want to take you out to introduce you to my mom and dad. And I found this out afterwards, but that made quite an impression on us, that that they consider us as their. And he was married by that time already, and she said, well, you know what, Mom and Dad is the one that raised us. And she said, them are my real parents. So that made them real. Girls are doing good. Yeah, it's Ken is the oldest, and then Randy and Fonda and Marlon and Michelle and Mona. And then, of course, Ken's got three children, 2 girls and a boy. Christopher, Candace, and Candace is married, and Joanna's Joanna's at home. Christopher bought a house right alongside Ken's place, and he works for a trust place. And Candace works at the bank, and Joanna just graduated from college a year or 2 ago, and she's, I think she did go to college some, but she's aching to get married.
Yeah.
She's not sure how old Candace is. Joanna's about 18, I think. I think right now she's 18. Randy's got 2 boys, Scott and Ryan, and they're both married. And the oldest one, Scott, they're expecting a small baby within the next week or 10 days. In fact, she quit her job Friday, I think was her last job, or last day at work. And Ryan works for a big contractor out there, and Scott works for a trust place, the same place that Christopher works. Fonda's not married, works at the hospital as an RN. And Michelle, she works at the bank. Her husband is, he puts in like sewers, and he goes into a place and fixes up for houses, I guess. I'm not sure if he puts in roadways and streets, but he's got a good job. He's a mechanic. And Ramona is married to a fine gentleman. His name is, well, Michelle's husband is Lee Humphreys, and I guess I should have told you who. Ken's married to a girl out of Virginia, and Randy's married to a girl that used to live in Oregon, but they moved into the East Coast and they married. And Sam, he right now he's not out working right now. He was taking care of a manager of a nursing home, and he was the manager of it. And they bought a small farm about 10 miles away from us. And he had 2 daughters by his previous marriage, and the one is married, and they're expecting their 3rd child. And the next one has a child, and she's not married at the present time. But I shouldn't have said that in part, but she's very nice girls. I said if I couldn't have handpicked any nicer girls. They're really nice girls. And so we got 3 great grandchildren at the present time. We'll have 2 more within this year yet. Then Marlon, he married a local girl, a very fine girl, and her name is Tanya. They got 4 children. The oldest one is Lance. The second one is, he's 5 now. Second one is Brittany. That's a girl. And then the next one is a boy, and his name is Trent. And the youngest one is a girl, and her name is Mallory. And at the present time, he's building a new house, and he's bought a duplex in town, and he's fixed up the one side to live in while he's building the house. But he's the one alongside of him, he's renting out, and he's a contractor, and does a lot of construction, and he works for himself, and works by himself, really. And we're back and forth a lot, and so that's about the extent of our family.
Yeah, that's good. Got them all. We should remember them all.
Yeah, I remember them all. I can't say all their dates,
Yeah.
but
No.
their birthday is.
Yeah. And then, what your first job was and what it paid.
Okay, when I left the farm, I always worked at home, but when I
Right.
went to Lansing to service, I worked in the bull barn, and I helped take care of the bulls, clean out the stables, and exercise them. And if I recall, I think my pay was $86 every 2 weeks.
Okay.
And then out of that, I had to pay Trying to think. Seems to me it was $45 a month rent for that was our room and board.
Mm-hmm.
It was $50 a month rent, and the weeks that had 5 Fridays in it, I had to pay $5 more, so it would have been $55. And I worked there for 2 years. I think by the time I quit there, after 2 years or 2 years and 2 or 3 months, I think my pay was $102 for 2 weeks.
Okay.
But you know, we survived.
Sure.
After we got married, we didn't have a lot of money, but we survived. We made out.
Yeah. And then I'd like to hear your, just testimony of, I guess when you were saved.
I can remember, I forget, I was about 11 years old when I accepted the Lord.
Okay.
And I went to an instruction class. Our bishop was Floyd Bontrager, and I was the only one in the class. And I can remember I was the only one. I was, for some reason, even through school, I didn't have many that I could relate to because, well, in my instruction class, I was the only one there.
Uh-huh.
Even in school, I guess the most that I can recall of maybe had maybe 3 or 4 in my grades, all the way from kindergarten all the way up to 8th grade. So I was kind of
got some one-on-one personal attention.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I had good teachers.
Yeah.
Ones I really appreciated. And I had a lot of buddies. We learned to, of course, the others were in different grades, but. Yeah, we had good times. And, a lot of them I haven't seen since I left school. Well, most of them.
Yeah. And I guess last would be just, anything you'd like to pass on, wisdom or piece of advice for everybody that'll get to see this. Something we can take, something we can pass on, something maybe, kind of lived by, I guess.
Yeah. I would say that question you asked me is that your children, try to spend as much time with your children as you can because they are soon gone. And then when they're gone, they're soon to college, high school, college, and they're soon gone. And I guess I'm one of the fortunate ones because our children and grandchildren are within, all but Michelle, the rest of them are within 10 miles of us. And
right.
We're back and forth together a lot. And of course, as their families start in, and we're not together as often, but before they had children of their own, even after they was married, they'd all be coming home. We see them all the time.
Sure.
Marlins are in and out a lot, and the grandchildren. It's always a fun time when the grandchildren come, and when we're all together, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, or Easter, why I guess we stretch out a big long table and I guess there's somewhere in the neighborhood of right now, somewhere between 33 and 36 when we're all together. And we have great times. And we got a big house, and we have great times. Some of the ones play games and just sit around and just talk talk about bygone days, Yeah. And the boys, when they come over, we get in talking about Ken and Randy, and they all do, but we get to talking about the Bible, and that's the most important thing as far as I'm concerned. About end times and the hereafter, and it's interesting. I guess I must have done something right. I guess I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I'm so glad that they're all interested in
Yeah.
spiritual things.
Yeah.
And, that means a lot to us as parents. It
Yeah.
really does. And, looking back, I made a lot of mistakes over the years. But those are things that I regret, but they're all forgiven, and
Right.
and the Lord has covered him with His blood.
Yeah.
And but it was a learning experience for all of us. Of course, then 3 years ago, is when I was diagnosed with cancer, and that was quite a journey. I was talking to Dean and different ones. They'd ask me about this. Well, how did you go about it? How did it all come about? And I won't go into any of that, but it was a great experience, and it was a time of refreshing my mind of, hey, look, spiritual things are more important than things here on earth, because we're only here a short time,
Yeah.
and we're looking forward to that time when we can be united together in
Yeah.
heaven, and we're all looking forward to that. And it's great. It's been a journey the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say I wanted to go through it again, but if I can encourage somebody or win someone to the Lord, I always said I would do it again,
Right.
if that's what it'd be again. Yeah, it's been quite a journey, but the last report says that I'm free of cancer.
That's neat.
So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've shared with everybody that I've got to talk to just that it's a neat, the heritage and from the aunts and uncles, that when you look at a reunion, just how many Christians there are.
Yeah, right.
It's really a blessing, friends that I have that have there's no Christians all the way back
And
in their family.
It's sad, yeah.
So I think every family has their rough spots to be able
yes.
to be able to have Christ
Right,
to lean on
right.
through that is a blessing.
Yeah,
and without that heritage, without all those people praying for their kids, for their grandkids, and
Right,
great
absolutely,
grandkids,
yeah.
and
I know some of us were talking about, last evening we were sitting there talking about my parents.
mhm.
And then we talked about my parents' brothers and sisters and how they all turned out. And I'm not saying that we were any better than anybody else, but my mom and dad must have done something right. That, like what you just mentioned, that most of them are born again Christians, and,
Right.
and we follow the Lord.
Right.
So, like I say, we was just talking about that last evening with several of them, that my folks must have done something right.
Yeah.
That there are so many of them, most of them,
Right. Right.
born again Christians,
Right.
and they're all believers.
Yeah.
That means a lot to me.
Yeah. Well, good.
Alrighty.
Yeah, just don't pay any attention to the camera. It'll do its thing. Alright, so I'm going to start with names. And we just go right in order. Name, when, and where you were born. We don't have to say ages. You can just say the date. I'm sure, that'll be
You want
great.
us to give the date.
Name and date, yep. When and where you were born.
My name is Shirley Oakes, and I was born in Midland, Michigan, in a home, at home.
At home,
At
not
home.
hospitals. That's what
Not hospital,
That's
no.
what I gathered from
It was at
the
home.
man.
And I was born October 5, 1934.
Okay.
My name is,
Yep, gotta say your name. There's some of them that aren't gonna know it. So,
Betty, what do I say, my middle,
everything. I want the whole name.
Betty Arlene Kauffman Schwarzenberger.
There we go. Yeah.
And I was born in Midland on April 3rd, 1926, at home.
At home.
And I'm Mamie Kauffman, Mamie Dorothy Kauffman. And I was born at a house in Midland, out in the country where we live. And on April the 29th, 1924.
Okay, wonderful. All right, and so I got from all the men, everybody grew up on the farm. Nobody grew up in town or in the city or anything, so everybody grew up on the farm. So what I'd like is some things you remember, some of the earlier things that you could remember from growing up on the farm. Between all of you, we should be able to come up with something. Whether it's good memories about your parents, bad memories about your parents, things about, I don't know, even the animals, chores, and jobs you would have had to do around the farm.
Well, I remember how we had to really work hard doing the sugar beets. And it's so different. It was so different back then than what it is now. We had some of them blocked the sugar beets with a hoe, and then we had to come along and thin them down on our hands and knees, and that was hard work.
That's what I heard. I heard some of those. I think my grandpa said that some of those rows might have been like 30 or 40 miles long.
Oh no, I don't think they were that
They just
long.
seemed that long.
But it was. I mean, when we were, that's what we had to do when we were young, and it was hard work. I mean.
So the girls were expected to be out
Yeah, we had
on the fields as well. I wasn't real sure. Nobody.
I never worked out in the fields. I guess I had enough grown older brothers and sisters that I don't remember doing that. I hated to work outside. I don't like to be outside. In the summertime, you'll find me inside, and I'm just an indoor person, I guess.
Sure.
But Mom couldn't get me out in the garden. I didn't work out in the garden. I don't know why. I would have rather have stayed inside and baked.
Sure.
I remember with the sugar beets, it didn't make any difference at all, seemingly how hot it was. But I remember my mom, I'm sure she felt sorry. So she would make us knee pads, would take like a little square and put strings in the top and on the bottom. We tied those around our knees so we could crawl up and down in the fields.
I don't remember that.
Knee pads must have been later, huh?
I remember then we had to go home, and they didn't have modern conveniences like we have now. And we had to go home and start a fire in the wood stove, and it was hot, the kitchen.
Always hot. And so, your mom had a nice garden, big garden, did lots of canning, I would guess.
Oh, an awful lot of canning.
A lot of canning.
I remember one year, as I recall, I think she had around 700 quarts, and those were the 2-quart cans.
But
yes.
I thought it was around 900.
It could have been.
950. It
Of
was not
vegetables and fruit, and we were not allowed to start eating at those until the 1st of November, so that it would last throughout the winter.
And we did have freezers, so like strawberries, blueberries, everything like that was canned.
Right.
Never
Right.
frozen.
Huckleberries, rather than blueberries, we didn't know what they were.
Well, even during when the house burnt, I guess, I wasn't there, but I was told that that was one thing that Pop told people to do, is go and gather up all the fruit and all the canned things.
That fire that we had made quite a not a mark, but impression. You know, we rented from what was called Charlie Sass's place, and the house was like almost like an apartment house, and we lived in the downstairs. The upstairs we did not do. But I remember that we came home, it was in July the 10th, we always kind of remembered that was the year that the house burned down. And Pop had built a fire, I guess,
In the kitchen stove.
and we saw the, sparks or something coming down, and that
We
was
had
then.
wooden shingles then.
Okay.
And I remember that we went to live with my grandma Kauffman then for about 6 weeks, because this man that my dad had a share something, and they put another house there. And I do recall that we went to live with my grandpa Kauffman. and we were there with them. And the day that we could move back into the new house, they were still doing plaster on the walls, but we still went in.
Now I hadn't heard. This was the first I've heard about the fire. None of the men mentioned anything about the fire. So was that something that happened while you guys were there and the
Yes,
fire
yeah,
started,
yes,
or were
because
you gone?
I think we probably came home from doing the sugar beets.
Okay.
And wasn't it? I
And
think.
then Mom,
and
yes, and he built up the
started the
fire.
fire.
Was it at noon?
At noon. But
and there
I,
probably wasn't a whole lot to do to get it out. Huh? It's not like
no,
we
I don't
had.
recall of even
Yeah.
I don't even know if we had telephones back
Right,
then.
I recall that we even had a fire department there, but I think Herman must have been maybe about 3 years old.
Okay.
I'm just thinking.
Well, yes, because I was born then in the fall.
And our sewing circle at church made dresses for we girls, maybe it was just Betty and I, out of feed sacks, and that's what we had.
I remember too when it was hard. I mean, well, I guess we'd call ourselves poor back then.
Right.
And I remember Delmer walking through the field to the neighbors with a big egg basket. He'd come home from the neighbors and
That was
carried
Pop that came home. That was Pop that went over, and that was such a treat that we could have eggs. Yeah, I think
Oh.
at Easter time, you know.
Yeah.
Yes, but I went through that house. Maybe and I went through the house that they built, then got moved north of Mendlin.
When did you go
And-
through there?
It was just about 2 years ago.
Yeah, and
Also, the house is still there.
oh yes,
Is
we
it-
got
Not
to
on the
go-
same place.
Okay.
They
Okay.
moved them up.
Well, and then we got to go in there, and I got to see the room where I was born.
Oh, that's neat.
It's north of Midland, north of Sanford, or north of Sanford, yeah. But I do remember one day, something that my mom did, and I never have forgotten this. We had moved to another place from where I was born, but it was my mom's my mom's parents' farm, and it was around noon, and we saw a big snake out, and I remember I can still see us standing around this, and it was a big rattler, and she killed it. And that I do remember. I often think about that, the strength that my mom had to do that, you know.
Yeah. What about entertainment or games or toys that you would have had? Obviously, there's a lot of hard work and
We
not a
didn't-
whole lot of game playing
We
and
didn't
stuff,
have a
but
lot of, we didn't
right.
have, I can't recall that we had toys.
The
back
only
then.
one that I really got from the men was that there was I guess they said something about kind of a hoop and a wheel.
Yes, I was just gonna mention that. It was a long stick with a crossbar and we'd have a wheel. We'd push this thing,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
And at Christmas time, at times, there were no gifts.
Right.
They wanted to, as much as anybody would have wanted to, but as I recall, the younger ones, like maybe Shirley, Larry, they may have gotten something, but Mom often would say how bad she felt that we didn't have the money that they didn't have the money to buy Christmas gifts, and it was also right at the end of the year where my dad had to settle up with.
Right.
So that's where.
Right.
But I do remember one year, and I wasn't that old, that I got a fountain pen with with initials on it, B-A-K. And I don't know what ever happened to that fountain pen. It was green.
And the Dutch, or Pennsylvania Dutch, would have been the primary language spoken at home. And how did that go for you guys when you would speak English at home?
Well, my dad would say, I don't believe I can even talk it anymore. My mom and I always would talk that, and my mouth wouldn't feel right unless I could talk it. But in English, my dad would say, if you can't speak Dutch, then don't talk at all.
Mm-hmm. That's what everybody said. I kind of thought that was fun story to hear.
Delmer still likes to talk to me sometimes over the telephone,
but it's hard to
Right.
I just
twist your tongue right.
Yeah.
I just can't.
Yeah, he said the same thing as what you just said, but he said it in Dutch. So I'm guessing it probably was just like how it came out.
Yeah.
But one thing I do remember, I appreciated my parents very much. They were strict, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And discipline doesn't hurt anyone, and I'm glad that they were strict with us. But my dad would say, and we had work in the barn for the boys, and we girls would. So my dad would always say, now the boys will help me in the barn, and the girls can help Mom with the dishes in the kitchen, and then I will drive you to school. Now that was a reward.
Right.
And we used to have, well, a couple miles.
Yeah.
We had to walk, you know.
Yeah, everybody's made mention about that ride to, to get the stuff done in the barn first or whatever, so they could get the ride
But I
to
do
school. I
remember-
thought that was neat too.
I do remember that when we lived over what we would call, was it the Leidig Place? My dad had bought a farm. That house since has burned down, but another one. And I was the only one at home. The others had all left home. And I would go out, and I worked at the hospital in the afternoon, did the afternoon shift from 3 to 11. And I would be out there in the morning, early in the morning with my dad, hoeing, I think was it beans or one of the crops. And then I remember he would say to me, well, we'll work until noon, then Mom will cook us a good dinner, and then that took care of it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I could lay down maybe for an hour or so and rest, and then I would have to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
I remember too that, I don't know if it was Larry or Shirley. It was probably Shirley, I don't know, but my dad got after me for not helping do the housework because my mother didn't feel good. And I felt so bad about that, you know, he really got after me.
I also heard, and I'll see it later on the tape, but someone, I don't remember who, made mention to Shirley taking the smallest bites possible, so she didn't have to help with dishes afterwards
Took
or
her
something.
the
I did that. I will admit I did that.
And one thing I remember about Herman, parents were gone, I think, to conference, church conference, and I was there at home, you know, I was the oldest girl there, and I remember Herman eating, he loved peanut butter, and it must have been a good quart jar. He had that gone in a week, and I finally told him, I said, he just has, and then I always felt that maybe they thought I was being too bossy to them, and I always felt badly about that. But it wasn't, I guess I felt I needed to keep order, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I still have the dishes that I had when I was a little girl.
Wow.
I have those setting out. They're China, like, well,
Right.
I guess it'd be like China. The one set is, I got 2 sets. And I don't let the grandchildren, great-grandchildren play with them. I mean, they're up high enough, you know. But those dishes really mean a lot to me. They're
That's
quite
neat.
old.
Yeah.
I have the same thing, and mine is in cobalt blue.
And mine's in green.
Yeah,
That was-
okay. But anyway, one thing that I still have when I was younger, I guess I got a little bit more maybe than what the rest of them did, because I was younger. But Mom used to make me I had a doll to play with. I always had a doll to play with, and Mom always made me, when she made me a dress, or then this, I know that she has my doll clothes just to match, just mine. But one thing that Pop did, and that is he made me a table. It was painted red, and I still have that table, but it's just small, and I have a little bench that he made, and I also have a rocking chair. Now, he didn't make the rocking chair, Melvin Yoder made that for us, but I still like that, and I still have that, and I want to pass that on.
That's neat.
And there is one thing that I remember that we had. We did not have dolls to play with. So we took a piece of wood that we would burn, and we would wrap that up in a blanket. And
That would be our
that was
doll.
our doll.
See, that really didn't hurt us anything
No,
at all.
no.
It didn't.
Those are neat things to pass on. And so then, what about school? Everybody I got pretty much either 8th grade or 10th grade was
I did.
what you went to.
Well, back there, when you get to the 8th grade, or 14, you didn't have to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
And I think funds were one thing, but I don't know, we just didn't go to high school. I didn't go to high school, but then later on, I did go into nursing, and my my year of nurse's training was equal to a year of college. So I said, and I did write the GED, so I guess I came out with a high school certificate and also a year of college.
Mm.
And then I worked at in nursing for almost 28 years.
And what did, it was kind of neat to hear some of the first jobs and then what you were paid. So like with your first job, what you might have gotten paid.
Okay. The first, I remember I guess I don't know, did I clean or did I babysit at Lester Wise's? And I believe she gave me a new dress or material for a dress, or 25 cents a day or something. It wasn't very much.
Sure.
And then after that, I went to do what we called housework.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would get 50 cents a day. And I felt I should have more than that. So I approached a lady north of, up in Edenville, north of Midland where we worked. Her name was Mrs. Bacon, and if I have it right, and I told her I felt I should have $1 a day. And then she told me that then I'll have to do more work for that. So when I related it to Willard, my brother, he said, well, that's not anymore, that's just working harder for more money. And I never forgot that, which was true.
Right.
But I do remember when we were going to school, my mom always had a nice cake or something that she had baked that day, and it was cooling. That was our supper.
Oh.
I want to say one thing about the school. We had round lunch pails, and we never had meat to put in our sandwiches. I think it was, I don't know if it was butter and apple butter. And I thought lunch meat looked so good when other children brought theirs to school. And I remember this girl, she was Ida Beach, and she was not, they were like a poor family, it looked like, and she was kind of a straggly. And I told her I would trade, and I don't remember what I asked her, if I give her something for a half a sandwich. And she did, and I thought that was really a treat.
And I remember too, oranges were very scarce. We didn't have that luxury. But I remember one time, I believe it was about the orange, I felt so good. And I think maybe at one time we may have had a bologna sandwich, but I was in one room, and I don't know, was it my brothers or was it Betty or someone, were in another room, and I was so pleased to be able to have this orange. And I went over with her so that I could eat that. And then my dad, through hard times, worked for the, it was called the CCC.
PTA.
No, CCC or something. And there was a whole group of men that worked, and they would eat their lunch in the basement of this school, which is not standing anymore. And I felt good that I went downstairs and ate my lunch with my dad.
Oh.
That was
That's special.
That was special.
I'd like to talk about my schooling. I went to quite a few different schools throughout Edenville, Hope, Wright, Federal Place, Midland High School, and then Merrill High School. And at that time we had to go until we were 16. Well, when I was in the 10th grade, we moved in the month of February, which was not at the end of the semester, or it was the beginning of the semester, and I didn't like Merrill High, so I quit. And of course I was 16 at that time. But then, at that time, then I went to work and did housework up in Midland. And I started out my job at 75 cents an hour. And I felt like I should maybe have a 25-cent raise. And this one lady, I guess I didn't work for her right or something. And so I lost my job because I asked for 25 cents and wait more. But getting back to grade school, I took piano lessons, and it started in the 5th grade, I think it was, 4th or 5th grade. We got off every Friday afternoon to take piano lessons. One of the teachers taught it, and that was all the way through the 8th grade. And when I we had a graduation for the 8th graders, and I was able to play the processional while the 8th graders marched into the Midland High School.
Wouldn't that be called the pomp and circumstances?
Well, I don't know if they it wasn't Pomp and
I was
Circumstance, a
there.
song that I played, but
And that was at the Big Center
Anyway,
for the Arts, too.
anyhow, that's what I did. But then later on, I decided I wanted to learn how to type. So I saved my money, and I decided I was going to go to EMC. But since I didn't have a high school diploma at that time, I had to take the GED test, which I took over at Clint Schroeder's. And he was a minister at the time, and that worked out all right. And so then I spent a year at EMC, and that's out in Virginia, and now called Eastern Mennonite University. But the second semester I took 2 sophomore classes because I knew I wasn't going to be able to afford to go out there, and I think that term cost me around $750 the whole year, and I thought I had saved that much money. And then when I came back, I got a job at Dow Chemical Company, and I found out that they pay you more, the more education you have, the more money you get. So I decided, okay, I was going to go back and take these 2 years in high school. And I took it through the American schools. It was a correspondence school, but I had to appear at the Midland High School I think it was once or twice a week. I had to go up there and help the teachers help me with the classes, with the subjects. And it took me, I think, 3 years to go through that take that 2-year program. But then I did get a certificate that I graduated from Midland High, which helped me.
Sure. Good, that's neat. Alright, the other one we had some people ask is, who was Aunt Alice? Was she an aunt, or was she just, a family friend that was called an aunt, I guess?
I think she would have been a great aunt.
She was our great aunt.
Yeah, and she was a very nice lady.
Mm.
I still have, I think it was after both of my parents passed away,
Mm-hmm.
there was things that we put out, I guess, I don't know who did it, maybe put out on a table, and we were supposed to pick out.
Well, that was when we settled the folks'
Right, okay, and Mom had promised me that I could have that dish. And I wanted that dish so bad. And I got it, but I also gave it to the second one of the girls.
Mm.
I have that dish, and we used it a lot at home.
Mm.
Canned peaches.
But I do remember one thing, that my dad, the life that he lived, he taught us, how important, when we went to church, yes we did. It didn't make any difference if it was revival meetings, how long they used to last. Church in the morning, church at night, we went. And he would read a lot out of his Bible. And he would often say, and I just can hear him say, to get ready for the next world. It was his concern, And I asked him one time if I could have his Bible. And I haven't yet.
Oh, do you?
And a lot of verses in there, yes, very much.
Does he have notes and stuff like that
He
in the
does
Bible?
have a lot of references, yes. And then I run across some of my songbooks that I have that he had marked down the various songs. And that meant, I think the kind of a life they lived is what prompted me then to know what I should be doing.
Right.
And follow their pattern too. I'm grateful for my parents.
Right.
I have one of Pop's Bibles too.
I think he had different ones, but I did ask him if I could have his Bible, and he told me yes.
I mark my Bibles a lot. I do.
So yeah,
because
so do I. And I think it's really neat to be able to look at someone's, Bible to see the verses that were important to them. And
I respected both of my parents a lot. But I was maybe a little closer to my dad than I was to my mother.
okay.
I mean, we could share a lot of things, and it was hard on me. It wasn't as hard on me when my mother passed away, but when my dad passed away, it was really hard on me.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I miss
Yeah.
and I do respect my parents. I mean, the way I dress and so on like that, I do respect my parents.
Mm-hmm. And so how was church when you guys were growing up? I kind of got that, you know, it was women sat on one side and men sat on the other side. And how did, I mean, it wouldn't, you guys probably wouldn't have known any different. But as that stuff changed, how was that? Was it a change that everybody, that you guys liked? Was it hard, especially for, you know, like your mom and dad to see those kind of changes, or?
I don't recall ever seeing my mom and dad sit together in church
Okay.
until later.
Right,
yes,
right, that's
later,
what I'm saying,
yes.
later.
Well, didn't that change when we got the new church?
It might
I
have.
think
but
that was.
we used to sit.
That's when it
We would sit up in front with our girl, with the girls from the church. You know.
Yeah.
Yes. We always like to have a nice hanky stick out of our Bibles. You know.
Mm-hmm.
We had little purses and the girls, I remember a lot of the girls, we sat in the front bench, you know. I mean, we had to really behave ourselves because
Right.
the preacher was right.
Right.
But yes, we had Bible reading. Yes. in our home.
We had the amen corners, you know what those are?
No. I have no idea.
Well, there were benches.
Well, these benches were this way,
Yeah.
the audience was this way, and then there were benches on the front on either side, and they were the opposite way.
Okay.
And that's where
They
the
faced
older
each other.
people sat.
Okay.
And the preachers always sat on the front row.
One thing I do remember that my dad told me that, and when I wanted to go to school, you know, I had to go out of town over to Bay City for school. He told me, he said, I will furnish the gas for you to go. I will take care of you now, if then you take care of me when I'm older.
Oh, that's
I
neat.
didn't know that.
That's what he told me. Of course,
And that was something that you got to do then.
I did, well, I didn't really need to. I looked
Right,
after
no,
them.
no, but yeah, yeah.
I looked after them, but maybe I was very close because
Right.
that was my home.
Right, right.
I just felt I should be home, I guess.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of memories of him other than when we would go out to Midland, and you know, I remember his dress, like how he,
Oh, you do remember, Brian?
just a little bit, just because I was probably 7 or 8 when he passed, and I remember, you know, it must have been, you know, a Sunday afternoon or something, so it would have been after church, and he would be sitting talking to everybody about what was shared in church. And so I remember, like, I just kind of have a picture, I guess, you know, almost burned in my brain, you know, that how he was dressed, having the Bible open, talking. And I remember the end time stuff, you know, being, because my dad would talk about it a little bit on our ride home. But yeah, as little boys, we were get outside and go play, you know, and that's
Well,
what we
one
did.
thing about him, he always wore a plain coat.
Right, that's
But
what
when he
I
got
remember.
married, he wore a tie.
Oh, okay.
And
I remember the collar. I guess
Yes,
you know, there
straight
wouldn't have been a
and
tie.
straight
Yeah.
sword.
I
Yep.
still
It
have.
was the extra, the collar, the regular shirt had a collar on about like this.
Okay.
And it buttoned, and then this other collar, this stiff
Mhm.
collar came and buttoned.
Right, and yeah, that's what I kind of remember.
But I do
But yeah,
remember that when we would, like when we would visit out in Delaware, the boys from Delaware, like Kenny, Randy, and those,
Mm-hmm.
they all hovered around him, and you had asked for his outline, which I was able to
right,
find,
right.
and
it's
I was
neat.
happy to give that to you. But back to his suit, I still have, and they always had, it was a piece of his, I don't know, was the material from his suit, but it's still in with his things. I have a little box with his watch and a lot of, and billfold. I still have his social security number. I keep all of that.
That's
I
neat.
just have, well, it was always home, so
Right,
where I went, I took it with me.
Yep.
Pop always had a horse. I mean, he had a horse.
Oh,
I have a
Yeah.
picture of it.
Well, he did farm with horses, of course, you know. I think they got these horses for a wedding gift.
oh,
And one thing, the day that they were married, I must have been in the morning that they got married, and that evening he went to church to have and had Bible study. You know, he was a leader, Bible reading, I think they called it.
I'd like to say just a little bit something about how hard they had to work. I don't know if this is going to, you know.
no, it's great.
but,
Everything's great.
They back then they didn't have combines, so they had a shop the sweet and oats and barley, and then they had trash machines. And I remember, and it was during the hot summer, and my mother had to cook those meals. Oh, I always look forward to it because we always got something very special. I mean, we had a lot different food, I mean, lots of it, because we had like a lot of men come in and help thrash wheat. And I remember my mom said it seemed like every time they're at our place, the thrash machine has to break down.
Well, before we had a freezer at home, I remember that Pop was always working out with the boys, and sometimes he didn't get in until about 20 minutes to 9. And I remember this one particular evening, he used to go and treat the boys to ice cream. And he wanted to make sure that he had time enough to go drive into Midland to get the ice cream before the dairy closed at 9 o'clock. And then he brought it back, and then we could have all the ice cream we wanted because it had to get eaten.
Right.
We had no way of keeping it.
That's a good way to eat ice cream, I think.
One thing I do remember, before electricity came, before we had our old washing machine, that I can still remember seeing my mother out scrubbing clothes on the washboard.
I've got a picture of that.
Yes, I think somebody has, and that really, I just still wonder how she was able to get those clothes clean that way. But I do remember before electricity, and that was quite something. But one thing back in about the early 40s, when we were in war and when stuff was rationed, there was a time that we were not supposed to have any lights on. We were supposed to turn our lights off. Well, we had the green shades on the windows, and my dad did not turn our lights off. And I remember going over to the window and trying to look out, and I did see, you could hear airplanes going around us, watching to see if anybody, and I remember going over there one time, and I was told not to go to the window. We were not supposed to let any light out for a certain length of time. This was on the Moore place, do you remember that?
One time we couldn't let our little light shine one night.
And then, the other thing we'd like to hear is when you became Christians, if there was a story prior to that, or if it was kind of a confirmation process, or how that worked out for all you guys.
I became a Christian through Andrew Jancy's
Okay.
revival meetings at our church.
Oh, okay.
I think I was too, and I'm not sure about that.
I don't remember the pastor that was there. My mom always thought an awful lot, but before that, I think I had conviction because I remember that I would go over to my parents and say, I just can't sleep, I just can't sleep. I remember one night in my dream, I did see seemingly like feet, Jesus' feet, and it was blood that was now, but I think I was 14 when I became a Christian and was baptized,
Yeah, it's amazing. That's one of the things, I kind of mentioned it in there, but I was talking to Grandpa a little bit about it, what a blessing it is to have Christian grandparents, and I have men that I work with that there's no Jesus all the way back to far as they can go in their families, and
That really hurts if you know that.
it's awful. I mean, because
they're not Christians, it really hurts.
Yeah. But I think it's something we take for granted often, and it's as I'm getting older, and running into more people, it really is a blessing to have that kind of family. Let's see, and then
I remember one thing, when Herman was real little, we lived in the new house. Herman must have been about, I don't know, he must have been maybe 3, but he had, I'm not sure, was it a swelling or, I think it was a swelling or something on his neck, and I remember there was no money, I guess, to go to the doctor. They didn't run to the doctor, and I remember Shirley was just little, and she, you were already
if I was,
Or was it Larry? One of them.
it
No, I
may
think it
have
was
been
Herman.
Herman because.
Yes, and then it was that I remember my mom taking Shirley on her lap and asking and telling her that if she would ask Jesus to get him to get better, you know. Now, that, I never forgot that.
I didn't know that.
I never forgot that. But she had a faith.
Mm.
My mom did. But I don't think they were as open maybe as we are today to express how, you know, our feelings, our blessing. I don't believe they did that so much.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it came from their training, from their parents.
Sure.
I want to share this just a little bit yet. When probably not in the last year or two, we haven't had the families home like we used to every Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And but Angie gave us Sam and I a picture frame, and she put a verse in there, and things that she remembers about Grandma and Grandpa. And one of the things that's in there is she said she'll never forget how Grandma and Grandpa hold hands when we pray. We always hold hands. It doesn't matter if we're out walking, just maybe from the garage to the car, we always held hands. And I really miss that.
Sue
Yeah.
and I do that too.
Yeah.
And you know, I can see it's handing down to our children.
Mm-hmm. And then, so, since we're talking about hand holding, and we might as well get to, when you met your husbands and how the, dating or courtship process went.
Oh, I
or,
can tell you, we had wonderful good meals when Sam was coming. Betty always went to the freezer at that time, and we had hams, and we had big meals.
And that was, I don't know if it was every Sunday or every other Sunday.
Uh-huh.
And I never heard my dad, Mom say we should hold back. They never did.
So, who wants to start with that?
What?
Who wants to start with how you met Sam?
I met Sam through Delmer because he dated Ruth.
Okay.
So our children are double cousins.
Mm-hmm.
And it was through that I don't know, I think it was during Christmas caroling, and I think that's when we first started dating.
Any
And
memorable dates or something that really stood out that he did right or wrong?
no, and I remember the night he asked me to marry him. We were out by the Lake Huron,
Okay.
out by the water, and
The day she married him, we cried in the living room, and we girls all put our arms around each other. He said, "I'll bring her back. I'll bring her back." I remember that.
Well, mine is probably a little longer story. You mentioned at first about Aunt Alice, and I used to go. I went with my parents down to see Aunt Alice down in Middlebury, Indiana, and she had a neighbor by the name of Mildred Yoder, and so Mildred and I became very close, and we went to Bible school together, Berlin Bible School. We went out to EMC together. We shared a bed. At that time, it was okay to slip it. For girls to sleep together in a bed, and we became best friends, and we just kept in touch with each other all through our younger years. And then one time Mildred and Rhoda Hirschberger came to visit me up north in Allgray at church, and I guess Delmer must have taken a look at Mildred, and it was through that he became acquainted with Mildred, which is now his wife. And then it was, I don't know how long after that, why my husband Jim now, he was in 1W service with the boys from in the East Lansing. And he had known somebody by the name of David Bontrager. And he had, after he lost his first wife, why he had made a trip down. It was about 3 weeks after she had passed on. he made a trip down to Indiana, and he told Davids that he'd like to get married to a Mennonite girl, if possible. Well, I guess they thought there should be a time span in there where he needs to kind of remember his first wife, and etc. And so it was in the fall then when Mary Ellen, David's wife, wrote a letter to Jim and put in my name, my address, and my phone number, and sent it to him, nothing else. And so here he got this address, and he didn't know one thing about me. And so he decided he better write to me. It was on a Saturday, and he wrote to me, and I got it on a Monday. And I know he said if he doesn't write by that morning and send it out, he'd get cold feet and wouldn't ask. And so anyway, I got that letter on a Monday, and then I wrote a letter to him that week, and then the following weekend he called, and when he got the letter, he said, well, he'd be up if he can get the sugar beets done. And anyway, I didn't know what he was talking about for sugar beets. I knew that he grew sugar beets in the field, but I didn't have any idea what he was doing. And so anyhow, he came up that following weekend, and then we were together every 2 weeks was the longest that we were separated from each other, and our courtship went fast, and in January we announced our engagement, and in July we were married. But we've been married now for 16 years. And
now that wasn't the first time,
But-
Shirley, that wasn't the first time you met Jim when he came to church there, was it?
yes,
I think I remember that.
we went to church, yes, and he said he wanted to come up and take me to church and take me out to eat. But
remember
the thing I want to say is this David Bontrager was a first cousin of Mildred's. And that's how David Bontrager's knew about me.
Okay. That's neat. And then kids. You can name off all the kids. And then how many grandkids we've got?
What?
You want to start? Your kids, your children's names. And
Charlene we was married in 1948, then Charlene was born in 1950, and then Sandra, that was in 52, and in 54 we had Linda, then in 59 LeBond, and then 69 Kevin. And Linda is the one, I said there was 3 of us. I went through a lot, losing 3 out of the family. And they don't live very far from us. I mean, Sandra lives maybe 12 miles, and Charlene lives right the yard in between us, and LeBon lives just the garden in between us, and Kevin lives about 30 miles.
And how many grandkids?
I have to count them. I think there's 10 grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and 8 grandchildren.
Okay.
And Jim had 5 children. One was born at death. It had its cord wrapped around its neck. And so he has 4 children, 3 girls and a boy from his first wife. And then I had Jody. And Jody is married now. She got married last fall up in the Upper Peninsula, and she lives in San Diego now and has one little boy named
San
Noble.
Francisco.
Leaf Noble.
Where did I say?
San Diego.
Oh, I meant San Francisco. She lives in San Francisco.
And I unfortunately don't have any children because I never was married, but I have lots and lots of nieces and nephews that
Yes, you do. That all love you very, very much.
I love them.
All right, and let's see.
Well, I was going to
Most
say
of that
too,
stuff.
after we accepted Christ, then we had a time about well, I guess you went through instruction class, and then I was baptized.
Mm.
We were all baptized at the
Okay.
church by the same bishop at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got to go to the Holy Land, the first time, the pastor that we went with was Methodist, and he didn't go along with, but I felt it would be to be baptized in the Jordan River.
Oh, it's kind of
So a few years ago, about 3 years ago, it'll be this fall, that I went, and the pastor that I have now, I was baptized again,
Mm.
and that was a special, very
That's
special,
neat.
special. Mhm.
Huh.
And then we could also give our testimony at that time, and that actually, in a way, I think that's more forefront in my mind than
Sure.
when I was 14.
Sure. All right, and then how about favorite foods that you guys have, and maybe how they were influenced by what you grew up eating? I've kind of gathered that your mother was a very good cook, couldn't make anything wrong, and but if there's anything that you were made to eat as a child that you won't touch now with a shovel
I do not like tomatoes, and I still don't like tomatoes.
Okay.
And I know I have children that don't like tomatoes, and I have lots of grandchildren that don't like tomatoes. But I remember a nurse telling me, she said, it's all my fault because because I don't like tomatoes.
Uh-huh.
They didn't like tomatoes,
Right.
but I don't think so.
She didn't used to like peas either.
Oh, I did like peas.
But now she does.
Oh, I love peas. But I guess my favorite food would be string beans.
Okay.
Well, I like pie.
Yeah, me too.
I love strawberries and I love ice cream.
Mm.
But I eat most all foods.
Mhm.
One food I have not learned to really like, and that is turnips.
Mm.
And I don't know if it's the way they're prepared or what, but it's rather hard for me to eat some of those different kind of vegetables, but I think I can eat just about anything.
Out of the men, I think it was Archie said about the only thing he couldn't stomach was a mushroom.
No,
He said he took a bite when he was
He still
young and he
can't.
thought it
No, I don't
tasted
care
like a
for
rubber
mushrooms.
ball and he wouldn't touch it again.
Because I had company when Herman and Irene stopped in on their way here, and I had called party chicken that used mushrooms,
Mhm.
and I thought, well, maybe they would like some, and I said, would you like some? Oh, no, I just can't.
If I order a pizza or something like that, I wouldn't get mushrooms on.
Mhm.
But I do cook with mushrooms.
Sure.
I mean, not too much, but I do cook. And you know what? I want to share this yet. I had to learn, I never made pie, but I'll tell you what, I made an awful lot of pie. I learned it from my mother,
Mhm.
and I miss not making pie now because Sam really liked pie.
Mm.
And he usually had pie in his lunch every day. Maybe that's why
Yeah.
he ate too much.
Well, I didn't learn to make pie at home. I can still see my mother, how she made her little rope crust. I make the wheat design on my pie, but I learned it by myself. And I don't like to brag, but I think my pie crust is pretty good. But anyway, one thing I do like, and that is nuts. And I would put nuts in anything and everything that I can find. And even in my sandwiches, I put my pancakes. Jim isn't all that crazy about it, but I love nuts.
Yes, my favorite food would be mashed potatoes. When I had what do you call it, on the radio,
What?
well, before cell phones came in the cars, we had those radios that we talked back and forth, and CDs.
Oh, CB radio?
And my name was the Potato Lady, I believe it was. But I like most anything. And speaking of pies, Mom would say, you make the crust and I'll fix the fruit, or it was the other way around, so we worked together in that. So we had a good relationship, but I still make the wheat design
I do too.
on my pies, and I learned that from my mom.
I do too. I guess my handle on the CBs was apple pie.
Mm.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then I guess last would be just if there's anything that you'd like to pass on, advice or maybe something that you've kind of lived your life by that we could pass down to the next group of people.
Well, I guess I was influenced by my parents, the way they lived,
Mm-hmm.
to do right. And then as I grew in my Christian life, of course, I learned, how you should be treating other people. I enjoy reading my Bible. I have my daily devotions, but down here it's kind of been a little more lax,
Mm-hmm.
And prepare for what is ahead. We're just here for a short time,
Mm-hmm.
and after that it'll be forever, But it doesn't say that I'm not tempted by the devil. Oftentimes,
Sure.
I am pounded, bombarded with that at times, and you just have to know. You just have to speak out to him, because he will not let you alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say to the young people growing up, just be an example. Do what you learned from your parents if it was good, and do that to your own children.
Mm.
I would like to say that let's not our circle be broken. Let us all bind together and because I did hear they say there's one thing a person can take to heaven with them, and that is their children.
Mm.
And if we all could just pray that way, God can do his part in it too. And one way we can keep that circle from not being broken, and that is to read our Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Without reading the Bible and studying the Bible, I don't see how you can grow in your Christian life.
Mm-hmm.
I have learned that.
I have that memory in my mind of my dad sitting, and he read a lot. He did.
And one thing we, as a family, when we around the dinner table, Sam often said, "Who wants to pray?" And some of the great-grandchildren, "I will pray." They would raise their hand, and we let them. It's just a short prayer, but they would say, "Bless Grandma," or "Bless Grandma and Pop," and they'd go down the line and bless every one of them that were there. They didn't really bless the food, but they were bless the people, the family that was there. That meant so much to us.
Mm-hmm. Good. Anything else anybody like to share?
Meet you in heaven.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I guess I just really appreciate my parents, the upbringing and so on. I really, often when I do something, the way I dress and so on like that, I often have to think of my dad maybe was a little stricter than my mom, or I felt so. But out of respect to my parents, I try to.
I think that's been a very common theme with all of you guys. It's neat, just that that everybody's thankful
And you know what?
for their parents and their hard work and them instilling hard work into each one of you.
Well, I think at the time we felt
Nobody
like
appreciates
they're
it at the
being
time.
so mean and,
Right.
and they don't understand us, but
We
that
understand it now.
we understand it now, and their teaching goes along
Mm-hmm.
your whole life. I miss my parents so much because there's many times I thought, oh, if I could just talk to them,
Mm-hmm.
if I could just ask them this question. Why didn't I ask it to them when they were still living? But their testimony to me meant so much.
I remember Mamie telling me, I've got pictures of me and my dad, and Papa, we called him.
Mm-hmm.
And Mamie said, she said, you could talk to him anytime. You can just twist your little thumb around him, he just could do anything,
But I've been told, the ages that we are, because I've been told, maybe there is a Bible verse, honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon this earth. And that's why you are still,
Mm-hmm.
we are promised that.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready for us?
Good. We just wanted to kind of get they're just general growing up questions, things you might remember. My generation on down really knows nothing about any of you guys, other than, you know, little tidbits we hear here and there. So we wanted to put it on videotape and be able to show our kids and our kids' kids and everything else. So we'll start with your name, full name, and when and where you were born.
Not why.
What's that?
You don't want to know why.
No, just when.
When, okay.
Not why. No.
Okay. I'm Larry Kauffman. I'm the youngest one of 8 children, and I was born and raised in Midland, Michigan. Lived there for let me see, I guess 21 years. I was born in 42, and I went into 1W service in 63.
The what? What service?
1W service. That's an alternate service instead of
Right, for the
going to
conscientious objector
yeah,
type thing.
right. And I went to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and worked there for Lancaster General Hospital for 2 years.
Okay. Doing.
I was an orderly,
Okay.
and that included, you know, getting people ready for preparing them for the for surgery.
Mm-hmm.
I went out on ambulance calls and did all the necessary things that an orderly does.
Sure.
Some were pleasant, more pleasant than others.
Right.
But,
Right. Some of them not so much.
yeah.
All right. Then. So you obviously, with everybody else, grew up on the farm, never in
I
the
did.
city or.
No, I never lived in the, well, after we were married, matter of fact, I met my current wife, the only one I was ever married to.
Mm-hmm.
Met her on the first day I worked at General Hospital,
Okay.
and we were married in October of 1964,
Okay.
and in 65 then we moved to Delaware, and I was there for 1 year, and then we moved back to Michigan.
Mm.
I was there for I guess 7 years, something like that. 5 years, I forget, 5 or 6 years. Then we moved back to Pennsylvania in 72, and back to Lancaster. And that's when I was in Delaware, that's when I first started driving truck, and I've been driving truck ever since.
Oh, still driving truck.
I am, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so growing up on the farm, since you were the youngest one, did you get out all the hard work?
Yes, I didn't do that much because I always had older brothers there to do that. I was pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my like Archie and Delmer, being the 2 oldest, I never really learned to know them.
Oh, really? Enough of a age gap there, was
right?
it?
Because well, there was probably 21 years difference in age.
Okay.
And by the time I was born, Archie was already 22,
Wow.
around that, you know.
Yeah.
And he left home and went into the service.
Okay.
He was, you know, he worked in several different states, California and
Mm-hmm.
Colorado and Akron, Pennsylvania, and Delmer. I'm not sure where he got married. You know, right shortly after that too. You know, and they left home, and so it was just Willard and Herman and myself, and there was enough of an age difference there that they did the most of the farm work. You know, until they both married and left, and then I was old enough to to help out on the farm. Yeah.
And so, what's maybe one of your, I don't know, special or favorite childhood memories from growing up where you grew up?
Childhood memories. I guess what I would say was the thing that I remember a lot, I guess, was my mother. And her beautiful garden.
Oh.
She had a beautiful garden. And I was always closer to her than I was, to my dad.
Sure.
And she was an excellent cook. She was a good homemaker and a good mother.
Good. Yeah, that's interesting. And what about the Dutch? Did you speak the Dutch also? Well,
yes. We spoke. We grew up speaking Pennsylvania Dutch, and depending on who I'm with today, we still occasionally will speak.
Okay.
But
and,
it goes a little harder.
Sure.
If you don't use it
right.
Continually, why the words just come a little bit harder to.
Right. Yeah. Archie and Dahmer both had kind of the same story about speaking English.
Yes,
Yeah.
I could. If I remember right, I could speak Dutch better than what I could English when I started school.
Okay.
Yeah.
They both said that their dad, along the English lines, well, Grandpa said it in Dutch for us, but it was basically, if you don't speak Dutch, keep quiet, kind of thing. So,
well, yeah. If they wanted to say something to somebody else that they didn't want anybody else to know, they would say it.
They would say it. Yeah. And then let's see here. What else we got? What kind of I don't know, toys, stuff like that, entertainment would you remember from a kid that you did?
My dad was very much opposed to basically any kind of sports.
Okay.
He frowned very much on if I even played on the church softball team.
Really?
Yeah, he didn't like that at all, and but I did it anyway.
Oh, okay.
And I know there was times that if we had a game in the evening, I would quit earlier and go up and do the milking, and then go to the game, and I think he was very much opposed to that, But there was also a big age gap difference there,
Sure.
And we had our activities that I can remember playing anything with at home, game-wise, with my dad was maybe Chinese checkers.
Okay.
And once in a while, maybe a regular game of regular checkers. But there was just too much age difference between us.
Sure. What about how you were disciplined as a child? Was it spanking, timeout chair, razor strap?
No. I remember if I said something wrong to my mother,
Mm-hmm.
I got my mouth washed out with salt water.
Okay, so your mom would have handled that all up.
She did, yeah, and but normally speaking, she didn't have to say it too many times
Sure.
until you knew what was
Right.
right or what was expected, you know.
Okay.
I guess I always felt as though I was. They were very strict,
Okay.
you know. A lot of the things that I had done, or that I do now, would have never been allowed to do that at home.
Really?
Never. Softball, you know, continuing on playing softball, bowling, you know, go to activities that we do now.
Mm-hmm. So those are things you still enjoy now, then?
Oh,
Softball,
yes.
bowling.
Oh yes, oh yes. Yeah, I'm in a bowling league with Brian.
Okay.
We bowl together
That's
in the
fun.
same team, and I will say that some of the most memorable things that I can remember growing up were the things that him and I done together.
Sure.
Yeah, days that I took that he had school activities.
Mm-hmm.
I took a personal day off
Yeah.
from work, and or a vacation day or something, and went to watch him compete.
Sure. That's good.
You know, those are things that, you know, are priceless.
Right. Right.
You know, and I always said that if I ever have any children, they're going to be able to do a lot of the things that I
Wanted.
wasn't allowed to.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
That's good. What about how'd you guys do holidays? Get-togethers? Did you have, you know, was it more extended family come? Did you immediate family and stuff like that?
I wouldn't say. I guess at that time, let's see, I had. I guess Shirley and Mamie would have been the only ones, and myself and Herman and Willard. You know, those would have been the only ones that would have been that I can remember of.
Being around for
Yeah,
holidays and stuff.
yeah.
Sure.
And as far as holidays, that I guess, excuse me, that I guess that was just another day,
Okay.
you know.
Sure.
But I still remember, you know, I can tell you where each one of them sat at the table.
Really?
And I remember my mother used to stand back there at the stove
Okay.
and make pancakes.
Right. And keep making more,
Keep
probably.
making more, and the rest of us were sitting at the table,
Uh-huh.
and we would eat, and many a times, my mother ate a cold meal,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and those are the things that I think help make my appreciation for my mother more.
Oh, sure.
Just things
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. Constantly serving. And what about church? Were you pretty involved in church growing up?
I was usher and head usher out there for I don't know, 1 or 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
and that was basically the only responsibility that you might say that I ever had at church.
Okay.
Back when I was, I guess, a teenager, you'd say,
Mm-hmm.
on Sunday evenings at church, we had topics,
Okay.
and they would usually have about three people that would that were given the responsibility of getting a topic ready for
Okay.
the following week, you know, and they used to choose different people out of the congregation,
Mhm.
normally a younger person, and then
Okay.
you know, a younger, and then a middle, and maybe an older person, you know.
Sure.
And they gave you the topic, and then you were supposed to, you had to get up in front of the church and either read it or present it to them by notes, you know. Our communion services were different then. We had members meeting,
Okay.
and the bishop would stand up in front of the church, and he'd read the head of the family's name, and then everybody stood.
Oh.
And if you were at peace with your fellow man and with God, then you were all right to, you could proceed with communion. And if you didn't, then you presented it in front of the congregation, and the bishop would then ask for, if the congregation.
Did they ever get people that would say, I'm not at peace with somebody, or would it pretty much always be they take it anyway type thing?
That I can't say.
Sure.
There was times that I can remember that people would get up and or would remain standing,
Mm-hmm.
and you might say express to the congregation what they'd done wrong.
Sure.
And then the bishop would, ask if he would say maybe something like, you have heard this, what brother so and so or sister so and so said, and will the church forgive you? Forgive him for that, and and then that was it. Or else sometimes we'd even, I sort of remember going out to the entrance to the church, what they used to call ante rooms, and we used to go through there and meet with the preacher. But yeah, that was it. Back in those days, it was more stress on. I think there was more emphasis put on dress,
Mm-hmm.
and than what there is now.
Okay.
Modesty, they preached about stuff like that. When now it's just you don't hear stuff like that.
Right. And so are you still active in Mennonite church, or?
No, we left the when we moved to Pennsylvania, we started attending the Paradise Mennonite Church,
Okay.
and we left there. I'm not sure, was it this past January, or was it a year ago? I think it was this past January or February that there was about 50 of us that left Paradise Mennonite Church and went over to Gordonville Fellowship Church,
Okay.
which is on the opposite side of the road from where Paradise Mennonite was. Paradise Mennonite had internal problems, and we just didn't like the way that the
Sure.
Mennonite Church was heading.
Sure.
And so we, I guess I more or less made the decision to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, there was about, out of our Sunday school class, there was half to 3/4 of our Sunday school class left.
Wow.
Some of the classes completely, the whole class left.
Right.
So, it was just, and over there at Paradise Mennonite, I was head usher there,
Okay.
and I was basically all the responsibility that I had there. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
What about, did you have any pets growing up?
Oh yeah, we had, we always had a dog on the farm,
Okay.
and cats.
Mm-hmm.
Every farm has a cat.
Right,
Has a
right.
dog, at
Yeah.
that time,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we always had dogs and cats.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. And then how do you think, say, the Great Depression impacted you? That was kind of a common one. A lot of people wanted to know how that impacted everyone.
I was born after the
Right,
Depression.
but your folks would have been...
I think I think it was a learning experience
Mm-hmm.
for them and a growing experience.
Okay.
I think that they're they were more appreciative of the things they had
Mm-hmm.
because bountifulness wasn't there,
Right. Sure.
and you know, with not having gone through the depression, I don't know. I don't
Right.
know.
Right.
I don't know what it would have been like had they not gone through the depression. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't. But I think it was more likely a growing experience for them.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't normally, when I was home, I guess I didn't normally have to do like some children do. I didn't have hand-me-downs because Shirley and I
Right.
were like, well, I guess there was like, see, she was in 30, there was 8 years difference between us, you know,
Sure.
and her being a girl, and
Right.
you know, so
Right.
I normally got, you know, new things,
Sure.
and I had 3 sisters that, you know, more or less took me under their care, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I guess they're partially to blame for the way I am.
And then, where'd you meet your wife at?
I met her at Lancaster General Hospital the
Okay,
first day
okay.
I worked here.
And did you guys date? Was it more of a courtship type thing? Was it how long? How long did you date for?
I started there on February the 3rd of '63, and I think I asked her out, I don't know, within the first month, I guess, or 2 weeks, or a month later.
Mm-hmm.
I never dated before I came out to Pennsylvania. I only ever had one date in my life.
Okay.
So I was green at
Sure.
a lot of the things that you know, that I should have been aware of. Things weren't then, at least in our home, things weren't openly discussed amongst my parents and myself
Mm-hmm.
as what teenagers talk now.
Sure. Right.
You know, and I think that could have been improved.
Sure.
You know, but you know, that being, you know, it's just a big change from
Sure.
the way things were then and the way they are now.
Yeah. And then, do you have any, I don't know, funny stories, interesting stories about any of your siblings you'd like to share?
I can't really think of anything
Nothing
now.
that just jumps out at you.
Yeah, I think the other ones, you know, Delmer or Archie might have been able to do more because when they started farming, they started with horses,
Right.
you know, and it just seems as though they could tell more stories of things that happened.
Oh yeah, sure.
You know,
sure.
because you know when I came along,
Yeah.
you know, I started out with the tractor.
Right.
You know, I guess the 2 things that I enjoyed doing more on the farm was cultivating
Okay.
and picking corn.
Okay.
You know, but no, I can't think of anything right offhand that stands out.
What about I don't know, favorite foods that you have now that were impacted by what you may have had to eat back then. I got, well, Dahmer said, well, it's pretty much nothing I don't like, and Archie said that he likes pretty much everything but mushrooms. So the mushroom tastes like a rubber ball the first time he bit into it, and that was the end of it.
Yeah. There's, I can't really say anything that my mother ever made
That was bad, huh?
that was bad.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
Except that, you know, it's pretty big expectation on the wife moving in there to
Yeah.
do things right.
But Lois and my mother were together a lot. And a lot of the things, some of the things, I shouldn't say a lot, some of the things that she makes now, or the way she prepares it, you know, she will say, well, did mom ever do this? Or did your mother ever do this? Or how did she do it, you know? When I was home, pasta was probably one of my favorite dishes, you know. I remember when I used to come home from school. I guess the furthest I had to go to school was a mile and a half.
Okay.
And I used to get home from school. I'm thinking it might have been 3:30, you know, around that time. And I would cook. I would go and I would make a plate of macaroni.
Okay.
You know, when I got home from school, and I'd eat them all, and then a couple hours later we had supper. And that didn't seem to bother me.
Sure.
But I liked anything that was there.
Sure.
You know, I don't remember of one thing that my mother ever made that we didn't like.
That's good.
And I think it was because of her that I guess I could say that all of my brothers and sisters can cook. And I give her the credit for that overall.
Yeah. Let's see. And then I guess last would be just I don't know, anything you might want to pass on to the next generation. Words of wisdom or something maybe that you live by, you know, some motto or advice type thing.
I don't know why, but there was a song that came to my mind this week. It just popped up, and it's a song that we don't hear very often, and that is "Follow the Path of Jesus. Walk where his footsteps lead."
Yeah.
And you're never going to outdo Jesus,
Right.
or God.
Right.
His storehouse is full and running over, and
Yeah.
that's why I am blessed more than what I deserve.
Right. Good.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else that really stand out. No. I get when you asked about if there's anything that would stand out amongst any of the siblings or the children. I still remember how Shirley would take the smallest bite she could, you know, so that she didn't have to help do dishes.
Oh.
But
that's a pretty good idea. I
Yeah.
have to keep that in mind.
yeah, I mean, you know, her and I were closer together, you know.
Okay. Sure.
And I loved every one of my brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
I had, you know, I was just thankful that I grew up in a Christian home.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that. I was talking to Grandpa about that, just how that's something that comes up with Heather and I a little bit, is being appreciative of that heritage. That I have so many people that I know that, you know, there's no, Christ is not in the picture, and it goes all the way back to great grandparents, all the way back, and because we did, and you have parents and grandparents and relatives praying for you and encouraging each other, and that, you know, be the very reason why we're Christians today.
Yeah. And you know there's something that I heard different ministers statements they used to make on TV, different speakers, and that was to pray for your grandchildren,
Mm-hmm.
and even when you think things aren't, they're, you know, that God never going to change their life.
Right.
Don't give up,
Right.
because when it's God's time, He will take over.
Yeah.
And if you try to make change before it's His time, it won't work.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess that would probably be the, you know, would be the what I would say of giving words of wisdom. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Good.